nga rin refreshments at the back, coffee, and the breakfast by our very own donut house. We will feel free algok mag-isang maya refreshments. Tiligal giri nga panel in the front, tapos il maging a lift. Tapos evalomul in maybe 2 minutes time pamalmasulang. Okay, matang edalomu ulem asbilong avilungil basul. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Roxanne Siwal Balesam, and I am the Chief of Staff to the Vice President and Minister of Justice, the Honorable J. Udu Usangabao Sr. I'm very honored to be serving as your MC this morning at this National Forum on Family and Gender-Based Violence. So to set the tone for our meeting, I would like to please ask Ms. Ibu Malsol to come and give the opening prayer before we begin our important meeting. Thank you, Ms. Malsol.
Maralong il tutta Vice Presidente, il tutta Bilog, il tutta Rogwaya. Maraming salamat Diyos sa mas kaktel ti al. Aday swakal ko ra, emphasize niya sa akman mga ibabibilya, ardil mas alaw sisiw. Hindi nga rin ako larikit, hindi ako po ko over aruba karikit, iba ko rin, aruba karikit, agirin mamdala Diyos sa magkukti akal mara aparikit. Makatangartir el angal, kirir artil, kirir tirgal mal, babta arapasirir el bolal talak kartir akmal. Tangarang luwasel sumari adar pela luwaisay, el stope la halol talak karapil. Ebay bolo tangali adios, bolo tangali luwasing rauro laringi, mga rauro lartil. Matapot lulu Adama Dios para lungil total merakaw, kimaral merasole, mertel. Teal, lamra sole mertel. El conference game ngarangi, lang maral ngarangi otalak, lalpor artil, marangal ka. Ibando pipilya masay artil masala o sisiw, hindi kakaro sa urol artil. Di tamalyo sa hakim mamsal masay ngarangi argok ka ruba kalman mo over lapa power artil. Basta mo magkitarar pa rir. Nagimaral ngarte, nagimaral lasero makakilter mo karapilor belaw, le kama maudyo serkaw. Nagimaral lasebal sa biira. Aruguyel, Rubakal Hedara family, El Mamadangal Kau, Balsab Il Mamadangalia roller tir, El Basab Dirigata Malias, Mar Maasal Polta Lotting roller tir, Makarangar Masa submit the Marubakal Sukumatangal Kauma, Tadi Mangalimadaran Maas, Mangalimadarangalaka. Kiberal Penang Maral Serubach, Maral Masauler Telteal, Kiberal Gartia, Kiberal Roguil Mas, El Vasea, Kiberal Oldarser Tirger Rogu, Yertil, El Tiramal Warma, Tirger Rogu, Yertil, El Tiram La Mosacata, Adamal Dios El Merhal Vasebo Masutrir, Es el Malaru Egibra Solemra, a Vice President, Yardil, Mampatagaya. Roller ardil, ediregal, el ngarinya ba ile da malias el palo gil at mangol tarok maklarngira haruba haldias sa mang badangriya roller ngi magimaral beraka maral wase gero wil mamsadar tiang kay gero wil el talent ngil tiang conference gimaral wase bal sabel kamabal paasal pangmayan berak langar kaba megimsir el pora ngarbitar kaba Edire que da mal de esta maso bangaringa ma Mr. Tiange bolo tingel wasay maral Dios isi guardil masal armola ruba kal Dios sending garo roller tir agire la hetor family el mamtangal gao mang masbel apa asal masabmit el morabi pada kamaral masaul protector ada rogu tirgel Problesrar adal ngarte rogui maigal kala mailum lel kipa pola el mera patanga pol klis ela patanga emo gitte kai gar kama mal mabut sel pol barektel el conference kamaral masa lagi ba ulterwak lai kan rogui ngarak lang al gabil Jesus nya tiar la sabla morar amen.
Malmasaula, Miss Malsol Rochelle Malungin Lungu, thank you very much for that prayer. At this time, I would like to recognize our special guest, El Albla de Lomu, la meeting with that prayer. Malmasaula, the recognized Honorable J. Udu Sangabao Senior, Vice President, Minister of Justice, Selni Obanged, Diregal Honorable Maas Bilung Gloria Chisali, First Lady Valerie Whips, Diragal Malmasaula, the recognized Honorable Floor Leader Senator Cecilil Aldabel, who is here on behalf of Senate President Baules. Senator Aldabel is the chairman of the Committee on Judiciary and Government Affairs at the Senate. The Honorable Noah Kamsong, delegate of the House of Delegates and chairman of the Committee on Judiciary and Government Affairs of the House of Delegates. Honorable Justice, Associate Justice Rudim, from the Palau Supreme Court, who's up here on the panel. Honorable Governor Henaro Paloy, Chairman of the Governors Association, who is here. If any governors walk in, we also want to recognize them, as invitation was also extended to them. We also want to recognize the Maasil Belao, Ipang Seineng, Rizal Belao, and all the Aldabel, Radil, Marsal, who are present here today. We also recognize the Diplomatic Corps. Thank you very much to the Diplomatic Corps. We have Her Excellency Rochelle Turner, Australia Embassy, Palau. Her Excellency Jessica Lee, Republic of China, Taiwan Embassy here in Palau. And we also recognize His Excellency Joel Ehrenreich, United States Embassy in Palau, who's sitting in the front. Now let us all welcome Mr. Iori Kato, Director and Representative of the United Nations Population Fund, who's here sitting in the front. We are meeting today as part of the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. This is an annual UN-led international campaign which was adopted for this year in Palau by Presidential Proclamation number 23-355, issued by His Excellency President Surangal S. Whips Jr. on November 15. This campaign requires community-wide unity, public education, and extensive educational initiatives, and the mobilization of residents towards a safer and healthier Palau. We also must recognize Minister of Education, Minister Jenkins, who is also here. As we look around the room, we feel blessed and fortunate for the support pledged by partners for the commitment of our elected and traditional leaders as shown by their presence here this morning, as well as the support of community groups through their leaders, community advocates, also referred to as Aldabel, women's and men's groups, as well as the youth who are here. As you may already seen in the program for the plenary session, we will be hearing from Director Sher Madraisao, who is here in the front, who is the Director of Public Health in the Ministry of Health and Human Services, which serves as the focal point for gender-based violence in Palau. She is also currently Acting Minister of Health. We are also fortunate that His Excellency U.S. Ambassador for Palau, Joel Ehrenreich, who's seated up front, has kindly agreed to share some personal reflections on family and gender-based violence. Associate Justice Rudim on the panel in this plenary will then provide an overview of the Family Protection Act court processes and data as an indication of the ongoing efforts in Palau to respond to domestic violence. So that would be the lineup for this morning's plenary. But at this time, we would like to call upon Director Sher Madraisao to please come up and give us her welcoming remarks on behalf of the Family Protection Act Working Group and in her role as Acting Minister of Health.
Good morning, all. Thank you, COS Blessam, for the introduction. Today, we have invited you all to this forum to mark the 16th day of activism against gender violence. Thank you all for coming today and showing your support for this critical, important issue. So what is gender-based violence? Gender-based violence, or GBV, means that harm targeted at a person because of their gender, or violence that affects a person of a particular gender. Gender-based violence can include sexual, physical, mental, and economic harm inflicted either in public or in private. Gender-based violence is a serious violation of human rights and a life-threatening health and social protection issue. Although anyone, women, girls, men, and boys can fall victim to violence simply because of their sex or gender, women and girls are usually especially at risk. Worldwide, it is estimated that 1 in 3 women will experience sexual or physical violence in their lifetime. The statistics on GBV vary greatly from place to place, and this fact is actually a source for hope that cultural and political change can bring greater safety to vulnerable populations. So here in Palau, we have adopted and supported this campaign for many years. And this year, the 16th day of activism is formally acknowledged, as COS mentioned, through Presidential Proclamation number 23-355. We know that gender-based violence is an issue in Palau. We have clear evidence from the last prevalence survey on violence against women with the support of UNFPA in 2013 and published in 2014. The survey findings revealed that 25% of women in Palau had experienced physical and/or sexual violence in their lifetime, perpetrated by an intimate partner. In addition, 9.1% of women in Palau had experienced such violence in the previous 12 months. We do have lower prevalence rate compared to the other Pacific countries, but the numbers from the last FAO study is evidence that there is no deny that GBV is present in Palau. Although we have not yet conducted another prevalence study since 2013, we know that there continued to be a steady stream of victims of gender-based violence in Palau. And this is because of the number of people who seek assistance from the police, the court, the health sector, and other community service providers. These are majority females, but we also encounter men seeking services for violence too. In the health sector, it is clear to see the impact of gender-based violence on victims. Their emotional, physical, psychological suffering is pretty evident, and the impact on the family members is devastating. Gender-based violence, especially intimate partner violence against women, is a public health problem. First, it is common and pervasive. Across her life, 1 in every 3 women, or 736 million women worldwide, will be subjected to physical or sexual violence by an intimate partner or sexual violence from a non-partner. Secondly, GBV damages the health and well-being. It is associated with a broad range of health effects. To just name a few, it increases the risk of sexual and reproductive health problems, mental health problems, chronic disease, and death. Furthermore, the harmful consequences of violence continue over time, even after the violence ends. The impact of gender-based violence includes escalating costs in health services, social services, education, and an increased strain on the justice system, not to mention that it also undermines and constrains the achievements of SDG. Our key response to gender-based violence in Palau is through the Family Protection Act, which criminalizes domestic abuse and provides victims with access to civil protective orders. The Family Protection Act was enacted in late 2012 and came into effect in 2014. So we now have around a decade of experience with the implementation. The language of the FPA have become well ingrained in Palau and is often used as a local replacement for the term gender-based violence. This is a testament to the success of the FPA legislative measures to respond to domestic abuse, although we should keep in mind that FPA and GBV are not exactly the same thing. GBV is a major but preventable problem that requires complex cross-agency coordination between the Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, the Judiciary, and our community partners. And I just wanted to mention Bango and SKO for their work to support gender-based violence prevention. Higit ako ra two community organizations that have really stood up and sort of take the lead in the community in the fight against gender-based violations. Each of these agencies and organizations play a fundamental role in response to gender-based violence. Strengthening a multi-sectoral response to gender-based violence requires that components such as capacity building, policies, protocols are developed, formalized, and integrated into the mainstream. Today, we will hear from key agencies on how they are implementing the mandate of Family Protection Act. We will also endorse the amended Family Protection Act, the Memorandum of Understanding. However, full signing will take place as soon at a time when all the relevant ministers are on island. So ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, once again, we thank you for your dedication and support in preventing gender-based violence in Palau, particularly through the implementation of the Family Protection Act. And let us continue to unite and invest to prevent violence against women and girls in Palau. Masulang.
Thank you, Director Madraisao. That provided an informative background to the issue on gender-based violence and Palau's means of response through the Family Protection Act. We are very honored at this time to welcome the Ambassador to Palau, His Excellency Joel Ehrenreich. on behalf of the U.S. Embassy for his opening remarks. Even though His Excellency has only been in Palau for a few months, he's already made his mark in supporting our Palauan veterans, the sports, Yakyu, baseball, and also his hard work in ensuring economic development through the COFA agreement. Thank you so much, Ambassador. Welcome.
Ungil Tutau, hello everybody. The Chief of Staff already went through the long list of all the distinguished guests, so in the interest of time, let me just say greetings to all our distinguished guests, and a special thank you to Vice President Senor for inviting me to this very, very important event, and I apologize that I'm going to have to step out early, but thank you for having me here. So you may be wondering why I was invited to be here today. I think half the reason is that as the U.S. Ambassador to Palau, I can share with you U.S. government policies and best practices and lessons that we have learned for you here in Palau to consider how that might be applicable to the situation here. And then right up front, I would like to say thank you to Tia Palau and to Island Times for publishing an op-ed from me and our Ambassador at Large for Global Women's Issues at the State Department, Dr. Geeta Rao Gupta, as part of our 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. But the other half of the reason comes from a conversation that I had with the Vice President a couple of weeks ago, where the topic of domestic violence came up, and I shared with her that I grew up in a home where that occurred. And I will get to that later, but let me start with the ambassador part, where I share with you what we're doing in the U.S. to address gender-based violence. So the United States takes a multi-layered approach to addressing gender-based violence. Our national strategy on gender equity and equality identifies preventing and responding to gender-based violence as one of its top 10 priorities. In 2022, the United States issued a new U.S. strategy to prevent and respond to gender-based violence, which demonstrates that U.S. efforts have evolved over the years as knowledge and technical capacity have been strengthened. The primary focus has expanded from criminal justice responses and services for survivors to more comprehensive efforts that also focus on prevention and education, social norm changes, health services, economic security, access to housing assistance and legal mechanisms. Engaging men and boys in gender-based violence prevention, along with girls and women, has also emerged as an important priority. Integrating programs to combat gender-based violence is also a priority for U.S. foreign policy. We have learned that there is a relationship, for instance, between gender-based violence and economic growth, education, or women's political participation. In Palau, as I mentioned in our op-ed, the United States is combating gender-based violence through its partnership with the International Organization for Migration by funding art and poetry competitions to promote engagement with high school and college students, psychosocial first aid training for police to better attend to the needs of gender-based violence victims, and high-level events and panel discussions similar to this with government leaders and policy practitioners to galvanize national action. USAID and my colleague Paula, oh, there she is, she's taking my picture. My colleague Paula Miller is also very active in strengthening national and subnational capacities to support sexual and reproductive health and gender-based violence services in emergencies, and creating safe spaces through work with the UN Population Fund and Palauan organizations. So that is the official part of my remarks. Now, it is my hope that in sharing with you my personal story, you might be able to better relate to the needs for policies, for laws, for systems to be in place to prevent gender-based violence, protect victims, and to provide hope for those who may feel that somehow they're doing something wrong when they see abusers around them. And before I tell my personal story, let me preface it by saying I loved my parents, like any child loves their parents. Like children in America and Palau today who are growing up in abusive homes love their parents. That is part of the reason why, to this day, my story is so difficult to tell. Because in telling the truth about the parents I loved, I must also reveal their faults and bring up painful memories. But I want you to know I don't tell this story out of spite, but rather in the hope that others who live with violence in their homes might be able to learn from it, and that we as a community can understand that talking about it isn't something that should be avoided out of shame, but rather addressed head-on with compassion. So my story goes back to my earliest childhood memories. My father was an alcoholic, and his father before him was an alcoholic, and my mother had her own problems dealing with alcoholism. And the fact that I can openly talk about alcoholism in my family today and the emotional stress that goes with it is not something that I take lightly. It was not something I ever talked about growing up, and I was well into my adulthood before I ever admitted to anyone that alcoholism and abuse took place in my family. So in the household I grew up in, it seemed that most days my father would come home drunk, and my mother would be angry about it, and often they would start yelling at each other, and the yelling would continue off and on for much of the night, getting increasingly louder as the night went on. Often they would be standing face to face, screaming at the top of their lungs. The emotional abuse, the hatred, and the shouting would drive me and my little brother to hide in our bedroom. We tried to ignore it, tried to pretend it wasn't happening. I would often cover my ears, and as I got older and had one of those stereos that had headphones, I would put the headphones on and turn the music way up so I couldn't hear it, and sometimes I would cry. As I got older, when it looked like the emotional violence might turn to physical violence, a few times I tried to intervene. I tried to shout louder than they were. I was trying to beg my parents to stop, but sooner or later they'd be right back at it. Sometimes our neighbors would call the police. I tried to call the police a few times when it got especially bad, hoping that the police, would come and stop it. But in those days, the police didn't really do anything to solve the problem. They simply said that the laws didn't allow them to get involved in domestic disputes. So it just continued. I never saw my father actually strike my mother, but twice, after I fell asleep with them still shouting and fighting, I woke up the next morning to see my mom with a cast on her arm. The story she told me was that she had fallen in the shower, but that was not what happened. Through all this time, throughout my entire childhood, the effect this had on me was I thought there was something wrong with me. What did I do that made my dad drink, or that made my mother so angry all the time, or that made them fight? Why couldn't I have a quote-unquote normal family? It was a secret that I kept from all my friends. I was too ashamed, too worried about what others might think about me. I never had friends over to my house. So I could go on with stories about the domestic abuse that took place in my house, but I think you get the picture. Let me instead jump to how the story ends. I left home for college, and I met the woman of my dreams, who is my wife today, and I realized that I had responsibilities as a husband and later as a father. I made conscious choices to break the cycle of alcoholism that ran in my family, and I'm proud to say that while my children probably have a million reasons to be embarrassed by or mad at their parents, domestic violence was never a part of the households that they grew up in. Ultimately, I confronted the issues that had marred my childhood and never became my parents. My father, by the way, actually temporarily gave up drinking when his grandson, my son, was born. When my dad stopped drinking, my mother stopped being angry at him, and they actually grew somewhat close for a few years. After he passed, the abuse stopped, my mother was a completely different person, a happy person. It was a stark contrast to the people they were while they were the perpetrators and the victims of domestic abuse. And so that's the message I want to send today. Actually, two messages. One, to anyone who has loved ones in households with gender-based violence, and another to the children who are in abusive households. So to the adults, I say this: gender-based violence is not right under any circumstances. We cannot condone it by saying, oh, he's an alcoholic, so he can't help it, or she has a bad temper, so she can't help it, or his father was like that, so he's going to be like that too. We can't say, well, I called the police, so it's up to them now to stop it. And above everything else, we can't ignore it or hide it. And to the children, I say this: if there is domestic abuse in your home, it is not your fault. There is nothing wrong with you. If your parents have problems, they're the adults, they're the ones who have the responsibility to fix it. And if they don't or they can't, you can still love them even though they're imperfect. And most importantly, because your parents are abusive, it doesn't mean you will have to be. You will be an adult one day, and then you will be the one who decides who you are, what your relationships are like, what your family is like. You may think your life is messed up, but you can still grow up to be a good parent, a good husband or wife, successful at whatever it is you choose to do. And you can even become an ambassador one day if that's what you choose to do. So let me close by saying once again, thank you, Madam Vice President, for inviting me here today and for holding this very important seminar. Gender-based violence is all too prevalent in the world today, but it does not have to be. It's through events like today, through addressing it head on, that we can remove the stigma about talking about it and give us the opportunity to end this practice that tears apart families and communities and lives. So let's have the courage and the compassion to do that for one another. Thank you, Ms. Lang.
We are indeed honored to listen to your personal story, Ambassador. It takes a large amount of courage to speak publicly about family matters. It is our hope that we can build an atmosphere of trust in Palau where others can also speak publicly about matters that are commonly considered to be private. It is this kind of openness that leads to true measures to prevent gender-based violence. At this time, we would like to hear a presentation, remarks by on Family Protection Act core processes and data by Associate Justice Anura Rudim from the Palau Supreme Court. She is a true a champion in protecting people of Palau from this violence through her role in the court, and we are very blessed that she's able to join us this morning, and we would like to give this time to her to give her remarks. Thank you. Thank you, Justice.
Sorry. Ngil Tutao, it is thank you, Ambassador, for your sharing your experience. It is indeed inspiring to hear, and it does show that violence does not discriminate. It can happen to anybody, and through your sharing, it not only inspiring but gives us hope. Susam lamadung makti olngito se digu balmaltal mora presentation nga yak ayamaran dia ka bullet points mal wakti mo mga adu makmalas mal umusin din niya motokora belaw so with your indulgence, our special guests who are here, I will be speaking mainly in Palawan, but hopefully clear enough that everybody can understand. Katakura mal na mo technologically advanced akmla already. Lagi na kalau sige ni ale. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. So ako tuluul judiciary malamol mal logi wa sel ngar alel la al talla ara Family Protection Act la designate el mongara alamagi I merula gel forms e trainer ar adama mo sabilon ngasir ar adal mirakort los pe angeso ngeso ay gel dadul wase protective orders matiawal tia civil procedure deka belgul mo spera adrala mal ubet kamur abla police mal ube kamur officer attorney general tia sel mal sa ML legal mi mokal mirakort olngita ngeso ra protective order wal lol ngasir kal tial domestic violence ladu para adalang aklem agim la sinseral al top al borngit la engwal agargri lam la remula agel necessary measures ra al sela agargri ablara agargri mung sab iul el mera sel temel aurior mal ubeng ngidil time after hours al eruklogram ututa ngede klog ngaringi ataletal sab emel lom gadong ragort mung mornya chatsel me oreng sara ong team. At the same time, diregal mla gimla ogi tiagi del lurior lobangela family working group family protection act working group yagi diregal mla trainer adra hospital mar adra balu gagi del community organizations el diregal sabeir el ngosuga wal feel like al form and then ol ngasirgal kol rakor trangi dil time mangdial bagulo asing di talgar blara gargarira sa emorngi fill out tagel form diregal mla mo sa emel mor hospital ngidil blabulis and sab refer kal morngi ma aurior amalamol mal ngaringi lon ngasir ar adalos peranges maral mare at that time ako mesaigal statistics tialla ablel paseringira 2012 ya hotel gays el neragor talol ngita protective order le sera 2013. So 20 years ago, in agol talbe gays lolngita protective order logi tialla ara Family Protection Act. Dim le one or say gidirak. Ya aringen la atama lora le endimral morba tialo ur. Sel got the highest number of cases that have ever been filed the lolngita protective order. Kung mesraigal statistics yung sira 2017, mlan nga 78 gays. Last year, yung walbla rebotel mo 42 cases. Hindi domes en diregal mla mas agelututak lol kukogi wala matuwalbo tamotutak criminally. Mundial dil adalo siga protective order al dingil may diregal mas aigal number of cases diregal tamlat tumalala matamotutak rala agorta diregal lulmu ursira 2019 el degal di lomes aigal number of cases el lomes sa daytay telar di tela sa alal file aiga diregal mlamo omes aigal case el wase telal case nga involve barangal telal case involve bar adal ngal itut ya domes sera 2019 egel case al out of the 69 cases el file lolngitanges en 21 ringi amle geisel involve barangala ya 12 ringi amle geisel involve adal itut sira 2020 engle 67 al gays, diregal 21 al gays ringi amle involve barangal ka, edimle 4 involve adal ngadal itut, ya 2021 eng 69 al cases, 18 ringi involve barangal ka, edimle 1 ringi a person with disability. Sel 18 cases il involve barangal ka, siya daytay 20 over sang 20%, 26% trial cases. So, maral say dalol korngi ambassador wasen dia kadil affecter angel at hindi regal nga niya sabi el affecter ngi darangal kal kirtel dalang okla. Sira 2019 Endra 2019 el mo alela 2020 ya judiciary adi la survey ngi al litil mortirgel adal mlata la belonge longi tange surakort el gora omes el waseng ngarang se ngaral aitaluriol lorur nga judiciary ngungil ada ngara sab irmu terulil misi talurior tadimle 69 al adam le sab il gongay al me malartal survey ya dome seringi en 3 out of 4 coming 87% tertirang al me malartal survey wal ble redile ya dome sing consistent teleng all 8 out of 10 tirigay dia me olngit ta protective order egel duguk tungura family cases family law cases awa divorce child support adoption mga eng 7 out of 10 ablo ordil meng consistent telwaseng 87% tirigel other bled survey tira emle kongel me melartat survey aradil child survey ulo otil wase Okoal basen tertirgal adal mle olngit tangi surakort amararingi at they found difficulty mlemring tira merakort el baby regal reasoning sertira wasing either ndim la kalodngay ndi kalod mol mutrel al time mlamo over 20 years al pasatyalla sorry 2012 10 years adiw lang hadir sa 20 over 10 years al pasala ending wal dir ko ngari ar adal men mutrel al time el de kalodingel wasing sabrin mayangeso el segi del de kalodingay malubeng gukmlornya either they reach the barrier al either tamlabla police emletelgibel mioda o ong trir el get processed ay gigi de ay gel luul plus at ay gigi del clo luldas wase it's a stigma ta marur ta madak ta let wase teatro rablima me de halswa kal to ar adal bolodngi segi the negative stigma mal mol dir stop ar adal bo ul man de kal belos pe angeso but the survey adire agungila o say once they came once al court in 96% tira actually they get what they asked for so once they got to court marubet police and they were able to receive the help that they needed so I gal survey otil wasing despite the challenges, and I know we're still continuing to face, ngaringi ar help paringi mandakal gired al give up malube kadamo of course kadamo frustrated and the rio rakidel malmol al moringi. So ay gigi de ako raday tayo del statistics el bleswa kal share lobang kamir el altutaw. And this segi dalulgoringi ya share was ya ultur sel survey milkat mo sera 2014 ako marang 2013-2014 eng was ya aradil belaw 1 out of 4 segi dal nga 25% aradil belaw amo experience some sort of violence ra al sel laklangaringi makadamra dio meser tiang urregid start nga kal 1 2 3, 4. Yatar ka ma'am, amortal experience domestic violence al selak nangaringi. So that's one. Ilmu tulom urgid sin da dirdir ngartyang. Mang di el sel tiaru me atten ergid. latal experience, malubeng mo experience a family violence, al silak lang aringi. Kadangal tatan nga riyo compared to our baby rabalu, nding it's happening, kita karel balu mumral girel mo sisi aurior, kadakay nga sira talong letal mo sa okrar bekla de los peangis. Okay, rumsulang edim lagi ya.
Maran Masaula, Justice, Honorable Associate Justice Anora Rudim for her remarks. Ambassador Aaron Reich, Girel Momral. So thank you, Ambassador, for joining us, and we will see you later. Thank you. Malungil sa iyo del presentation Honorable Justice Rudim. Mo kora leader gid el morsel nga next nga agenda argid el mo sabed el mo remeng sa presentation tiral panelist argid el tira taege gid el agency ra kabalment ma community el loltaw tersegi del Family Protection Act el plan mentioner nga director share lo sisegi del Family Protection Act el pasar nga olbila 2012 saya awal dos peringi el milisi ay gaygi el terbengela atogora domestic violence ma gender based violence rabur belaw ikadamal ngal tangatar other belaw ngangi tegi del luud dagal patokol belura meliwak kargi ngangi tegi del laarir el ngarinya mimok lel ta'lir el moragort sabarir el ngwa protective order also mangarinya ulara abal mortir sabi el agort el issue ngi within 24 hours sabi lol nga sergi the release gid ida ka dos pera adrala amada ka do bodosiga tokol talentangila amalar segid el program segid el ngeso mang diragal malmasawla diragal ngara table bol sabi eda lol ger tiragi del panelist el mo kukmaging alir bol sabi el present gid alilay ngirmang amo moderator sa el panel session tel panel session na dira kal selbol marega gel presentation tiring sabel nga te alra ger so mga nga question nga audience it's either loger tir maktira kal mal mrenga sule la minister Chengin sangaya ko kom te era school el ngartialo banged ang kadamding ko seng nora guru lenga gidel mlame mal masisi sabel lo banged el altutaw dira kal al acting director of Bureau of Public Safety kada karam la rong sa to el bulis ra gal al dadu magdamal masaw la mrenga sule bulis el mal maasang mo sabril may acting director John Galay Gabriel ang artiang Lobanggel Chief of Patrol Division of Patrol Fabian ngira manyor tegid sel ngiyal ngargit trigay del first responders ra blabulis omgol ra 911 ing tangar ngela Chief Fabian ngira manyor hindi ka mamaskida cellphone ringi malsuko mang kom club saying weekend ako mo ringi tiramal madulaw rior malsumtukok mo gora off island el mora meeting to make sure nga adalo nga alagi gid rior diragal mo director share mang mga artegi del panel era Ministry of Health as we said Ministry of Health and Human Services focal point tertegi del tokoera Family Protection Act and gender based violence diragal mal masawla Palau Red Cross Society Milgo rong siya Michelle Uwedal mo o ay sagel programa lingaringi retir lo lang sewa agay el tulungal ka marangal ka sel bol ngaringi agay del kora malra al sela dalang ok makulingit mabol sa bari del baymera madal ada kom dingar tila pero kada ding matabali walwasay ako bay dingar tila mga ado okay gukungil basrit Oo, si Ella Director.
Palungil tutaw, nga lilang yung mga Special Assistant to the Vice President, and I'll be facilitating this panel this morning as Ms. Stiwal, Chief of Staff, said it is both an honor and a privilege to welcome you all to this vital discussion on a multi-sectoral approach to addressing family and gender-based violence. We have gathered an esteemed panel of experts, each representing critical sectors of governance, to delve into the multifaceted dimensions of family and gender-based violence. Today's panel brings together representatives from the Ministry of Education, Minister Dale Jenkins, the Bureau of Public Safety, including the Chief of Patrol and the Acting Director of the Bureau of Public Safety, the Ministry of Health and Human Services, Acting Minister Cher Madaisao, and Director of Public Health, sorry. And the most important portion of our support to victims is the civil society, the Red Cross Society, Ms. Michelle Ueda. Our panelists today will share insights in their respective agencies' roles, challenges faced in successful collaborations in combating family and gender-based violence, and moreover, will explore crucial topics. Before I delve into the discussion, I would also like to express our gratitude to each of the panelists for their commitment to this cause and their expertise and their dedication. I also extend sincere appreciation to UNFPA for their invaluable support in making this event possible. Their commitment underscores the collective responsibility we share in addressing family and gender-based violence and fostering a culture of respect and equality. And without further ado, let's begin our discussion with enlightening and crucial contributions. Minister Jenkins, I'd like to start with putting you on the spot. As the Ministry of Education representative, with the rise of online gender-based violence, what initiatives has your ministry taken to address this challenge? And how can partnerships with the other agencies strengthen responses to online gender-based violence incidents?
Thank you. Glad we started with an easy one. The use of technology, as we all know, is changing our lives, and it's changing them at an increasingly rapid speed. Where we were 5 years ago and where we are today are barely recognizable in terms of our use for technology. I had my first experience with online bullying at a very early time, which was about, let me add up some years here, 18 years ago. And it was brought to my attention by a parent because we were not at such a time that we were aware of the use of the internet. And in terms of that, it took a very, very brave parent to come up and to say that their child was being bullied. And it was very difficult for us to address that issue, to obtain information and evidence. So it took a collaborative approach with the parent, we tried to isolate the children as much as possible to leave them out of the discussion at this point. But we were very fortunate that parents of both of the children who were involved were supportive of our efforts. And we were able to come to I think an amenable decision, which included some punitive measures, but they were supported by the parents. And I'm very happy to report that both of the children who were involved in that have both done well in life and have progressed and now have children of their own. And I'm still in touch with them, particularly with the father of the one who was being abused, who became a very close friend and a very strong-minded person. That being said, schools have not done a good job in addressing this issue. As a priority, it has not been one of our top priorities. We have always focused on only one aspect of the abuse, and that is with the children and our students, and primarily on only the two obviously easily discernible issues of physical and sexual abuse. We have not been very successful in addressing the psychological and or financial issues. That being said, I think issues like this meeting and the work which has been done on the FPA in Palau has certainly raised our awareness of that. We have, since the memorandum was signed 2 years ago, we have completely revised our policies and our protocols to reflect more accurately the intent of the law. I have some concerns which I want to address with the members of the OEK about the way the law is written that may not be the best way for us to handle it at this moment, but again, those are minor issues. The protocols we have in place are basically reactive. In other words, it's after a fact. Something has happened, abuse has happened, and we're trying to deal with that and move forward from that point, which is fine. But even more importantly, as far as a long-term approach, as a result of the memorandum and as a result of the commitment that the MOE has made in this memorandum, we are going to be including ways of incorporating awareness of the abuse into our curriculum. And I think that essentially this will be a much more effective way for us to move forward in the future, in that, as all educators know, the most important people involved in young people's lives are their peer groups, their friends and the people they hang out with. And by mobilizing them and making them aware of the issues of abuse. Some of these issues, as we have on this, the children are not aware of that. They don't recognize the psychological issues as much. And we have a difference in opinion among children and the adults as to what's the difference between teasing and making fun with friends and bullying. That's a continuum that we need to address. But if we can mobilize the children to say that abuse is not acceptable as a peer group, that's a very powerful weapon for us to use. Now, the cyberbullying is one which we are looking to address, and we have a long way to go to protect that. We cannot. Hello? We cannot simply make a rule against it, because much of this occurs outside of the schools, outside of our direct supervision, and is very difficult for us to deal with or to become aware of. So that's an area that we are going to have to look to where we're going to need some expert assistance in coming in and helping us be aware of what signs can we see with children that they are being bullied or abused by the internet. I'm rambling a bit, so I'll try and end it up there. So it's a new frontier, and we are working with it. We're very, very pleased that our schools are really incorporating technology into our use so that it's not as threatening for the faculty. The teachers are the ones who are going to be the front line on this issue, and so we'll be incorporating that as we go into our professional development workshops as we go out throughout the upcoming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Jenkins. On a personal note, as a parent with children in the public school system, thank you very much for your approach and your work to make a safe environment for our kids. Luckily for you, we do have members of the OEK present to hear you, and hopefully we'll be working with them in the future to make our policies better. In the vein of putting you on the spot and asking really easy questions, my next question to you is in the context of sex education. How can the ministry address cultural sensitivities while promoting a curriculum that effectively addresses issues related to consent and healthy relationships?
This is a very delicate issue, as I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. Our original impetus on this is to look to our Palauan studies, which is a vital part of our curriculum, and to begin with the very young children to begin getting them the idea as to what are the issues of right and wrong within the family. It's come about as a result of parents who have come and some governors who have come and asked us to incorporate different elements of our instruction into that Palauan Studies course, which is required of all students to take. So it's going to be one in which we will be able to address, obviously the physical abuse is the easiest one for it to address. You know, I think culturally it's pretty well norm that striking another person is not acceptable behavior. When we get to the others, that's going to be a little bit more delicate. But again, that's one way in which we're doing it. We also have a crying need for trained professional counselors. We have assistance coming from the Ministry of Human Health and Human Services, but we are very, very short on having trained people who can work with the students on a daily basis. Not only, number one, we don't have them on there. They do not live on island, and number two, we cannot seem to attract many people to come here with the salaries we're currently paying. But so that's a challenge we face. So that's how we'll hopefully be able to handle it.
Oh, thank you for that. Do you hear that, members of the OEK? Salaries? Just kidding. I'm also informed that we have a representative of the judiciary, Assistant Clerk of Courts, Ms. Maka Oime. She's sitting in the front next to Director Sher. I think everyone knows she's been the face of FPA Clerk of Courts, I think ever since its inception. I do remember when I first came back from law school and we first had our outreach, Maka, you were representing the court and talking about those processes. So in that vein, since I've already put you on the spot, I might as well ask you about the court processes. For instance, I know I have a friend who's a victim and wants to seek help but doesn't want to go to the police, is afraid to go to the doctors, and want to come to the court. Could you explain what a victim can do to find help as vis-a-vis the civil procedures in the court?
Test. Thank you, Ms. Alilay. I can beg pardons and just speak in Palauan so the audience can understand me better. So, ako na sa komti mitang alkakaroku yung ang kleka maka oimay. Selguk korawal redek raal sila court. Awak sel koradi del boy, el mrulay yagi del babiyer, o lablam sa chach. So my main role is to assist victims with the petitions for protective orders, okay? So sila adame el lolingitange so dakal ko through our police, dakal war hospital, di malmal tan mera court, segi da ul mom lolingi sila, amru mga mokler segi dal tele laurur. Ma adame el wasinga ka osbaklo. Mak marit lelingi yagot tang mora screening. Luwasay ako tuluul kaul adal mlaying qualified ng kita doon sa qualified ng ewan sila en sa maluban dia. So tuluul so makal ada ugar tagi del tokoy kal ada victim of the domestic violence mal sa ongerung kal ada tera ada ng rabla el minor ngal yolgil ra 18 malub tera ada smer incapacitated bulwase smerap tulul ituut way tirigay gidalat malubat adal da si ilmera court wadase kanyuying kangar hospital way tirigay gidalat asabem sa emelom tirigay gidalat me olingita osabakla ongedey sukumga agency sukumga bla police hospital teachers sensei spira dire camera court olingi tange sulmura gelngal ko student so sige na number 1 look screen ringi ongerung ngaral banding abuse o mulsis para alsel so physical ay gigi dalo kul talaman al mera banding sige da adi got ulang yes ongerung, emotional, extreme, sel malulisul, teletal logora apek kalsi semlamodas emel, kira dalang aklemel mi mok ngarabuda, wada say, jadi mara laula arable gorakaw maulak tak ma kita lo malokoy ma kita lo marul, not necessarily physical, hindi extreme emotional or psychological abuse. Sa ongerung, ongeday, alsugum ngogiw sige da kalspengalarungum, kamalaman laklok lalaat. So property damage. Ay gigi da kalde el wal ngar sige del petition ra court as el define der sige del abuse. Most of us mandim la kuredi makurak man nervous. Ay gigi del kalde el bangal abuse awad kila marita lo asing manal ngari maluban dal. Das emedi mara court tam dasi makanso kati ar olol top ng kalbi igrablaling mga balungor ngak malubang ngani atar dillo bang anda ka sa LYC ila ngani abuse established. Misal ome igidak screen ase oy gudut maklaba bilingem morsel gotot kurba bisabet yung sa chacha mang mesang chacha all top da igidel mayday igidel orders osap. So basically that's my role. Ako nga sa oral matmokor sige da bilingem. Talwere ka 24 hours. Ma deng wala nga on call FPA clear. Mal ututaw mal club say mal after working hours makmal di available. Lolo nga sir adri say gitil ngeso. Okay? Deng wala nga 775-4044. That's my telephone number. Okay? Was it clear?
Thank you, Maka.
Thank you. So sorry.
So that's 775-4044. I am also writing that down, as I'm sure everybody else is in the room. Okay, so moving on from the court processes, I will get back to you. Do not go anywhere. I would like to turn to the Bureau of Public Safety. I'd first like to address this question to the Chief of Patrol, because the Patrol Division, the officers of the Patrol Division serve as frontliners. They respond to all calls for police services from the public. Chief Manyor, can you talk about the training that your officers undergo to be ready to recognize and respond to family and gender-based violence?
Total mer adro ko yung therapy PS di mo banggel ay gel susulbrado madam vice president legal emoche seral kotel matmok tala tel FPA equipo motangali agi dire kalmlo askar a team to maisel train ra pulis ro ko mamdu kasi makalal handle tel to kala FPA mal ngom le dire kal kolam le beotar mama taw tringil ngam lalingi sel ko la dire kala to ko banggel kasi no drop policy so sel the bong ngirel mo katmok laurior sel time al osoy matabom dire kal tangat dire kal sel kantak tra archaso sel ko say mong mortira toy ya auriora malimol el bebileng malbomring ra tegal guk le report le sel time yang lamo gire dal mo kal other half al maral mo murak mungil ding sige dok no kasi ka issue ra 24 hours stay away or there amo maling dikit all taw tergi la katuk tingul murak mungil e kita maling taw dengwa elutang al lutul boling al tigel dong etamlal mutul mo magi mlo tak talura kasi tungol mo osmari through the process il maramre al time patbok lulul waisay marbulis ro ko ya matangali ay gagit ro ko blood dok kasi involve direct mo involve bato ko rangal ko direct may gen direct priority to era urol ya direct mal mabring time so libong ya reporter bil neighbor ya kal adil kuk igal mitulul lumulam lam orgi al atil mo durar bulis sige da katuk mo kada mabring al ida inding again sel nga ya kita ko science la physical abuse ma ora tigal mo karam lam emotional abuse la blay agi tigal mo tuloy agi tigal mo tok na to kala hulur tima meski tadi kaya kaya bal kola start sera at 22 ang ali ato report to liga kita liga FPA itya spell bongod ora legal lola pa court tigil guk timira pala pulis SPL ngali tigil guk timil mora court sel guk mongot start sera court ngali arterul 18 tigil 18 or under hindi na kalusis ba ay gigi hindi na kalwala dia kalsalungi kola aisel mergit di hindi na dal mo smart maradra bala mo mga kositya at kasi elmral moklo ala ka take action namre at time is elmral moklo especially lagi dal ngala ka andira 18 is next age paget 30 ngala 25 al mudori siya man mut Lekol talak kasi sige nga 18 to 20 lakad mas mook. Yes, sige dagayam la mo 25 to doring sel mal la moklo klo atti elela klo termal el mortigal. Mis el dingwa adal moroy. Even though natto bata court order kasi ndakal kidul mo. Itaw de ngwalak mo nga lang ay lutal nga yaw digal ito mo. Ya adat termal el iway ng namol.
Thank you, Chief. So what you're saying is that we really need to teach the children, Minister Jenkins, while they're younger, because I'm 35, he's saying I have no chance. As Justice Rudim pointed out earlier, last year, FBA civil petitions did drop to, I believe that was 46, but criminal cases have risen. To me, that signifies that there's been a rise in police responses. And the police have perfected their procedures. Chief, does the Patrol Division have a focal point for family and gender-based violence who is knowledgeable about these issues? And what's their role in the division?
Ngel focal point apla police at yakal responder, yakal first responder, yakal patrol officers, yakal domestic murtaral, kaya dire kal kiblam equipped tira rokul to la girel tagil to la FPA so sel ngidil police respond le ko can be able to determine kwasityang what type of FPA and what process losses bill time then wa morang gel focal point ta sois bel mem saudari ekuk mo do moral wa court ng AG ma to la hospital mo tig over legal hospital legal victims at FPA.
Okay, Sulang. And I would be remiss if I ignore the fact that we do have on the panel acting director, Kale. Just as the representative of VPS as a whole, could you just talk about any collaboration? How has collaboration between law enforcement and communities, or Adrabulu, contributed to addressing family and gender-based violence? And do you know of any strategies that have proven effective in your experience?
Palugil tutaw, paldiga telal days ra kutal trual nga maraming investigator. Investigator makpaibro tayo lurion. Agi moruri la pabla pulis agi may lagi hindi agi prula prevention. Kung sabi lo kung marap nangalak ngaram like o bisa kang magirap pula aray lore ka pasipis stop the violence o bang lebat morardi lupaya. Niya way yung taldo nga chip hindi ka rin training di kapag kala HC namin ka ma'am sel kibom pomdil kibom pisa yagil situation na kibatu engul pas moranik di ake swasil lugar gacci mam dia ka no drop arogul domestic violence litigation may apa priority rawa your public safety hindi me baru mora ichi tulang.
Thank you. Moving on to address the health sector, Director Sher, in the healthcare sector, how can services for survivors of family and gender-based violence be improved, and what initiatives are in place to raise awareness within the community?
Ali, testing. Thank you, Ulilai, for that question. First, I just wanted to say that I think the healthcare system is probably the only institution that interacts with almost all women, if not all, at some point in their life. So given that, we would expect that our numbers on GBV within the health sector would actually reflect the actual burden of the situation. However, it's not. And I was just looking at the numbers from 2018 through 2023 on the number of ER GBV encountered case, and when we pulled it up in our system, it showed 19 cases of gender-based violence encountered in our ER setting, and that's over a period of about 4 years. So we know the numbers are underreported. There is a big issue that we need to address, and that's our data capacity and collecting the correct information and the right information so that we'll have a better understanding of the issue, the prevalence, the extent of the issue, and the severity of the issue so that we can better design interventions targeting those issues. But to answer your questions, historically, the health sector have been mostly focused on the medical, mental, and the psychosocial aspect of gender-based violence. With the roles in the MOU, it clearly defines the roles of the health sector, which is inclusive of the social aspect of it. And that's a critical, important part of the overall work in ensuring that comprehensive services are provided for that individual. So it's not just looking at the medical and physical aspect of it, but also looking at the other social factors that are part of the issue. And as I mentioned, historically, we've been sort of focused on the medical aspect of it, but this is a prime opportunity for us to look at our existing interventions and come up with new programs that designed to specifically target the issue of gender-based. So not just within the health sector, but also coming up with some sort of a mechanism which we hope it can be done through this formal MOU that will allow us to also connect with the other relevant agencies to ensure that the services are coordinated and the victims or survivors get the actual services that they need. There are other capacity issues, and I know Minister Jenkins brought up the issue of training. I would also say that one of the biggest issues that we have within the Ministry of Health in terms of gender-based violence is not having a dedicated pool of people to specifically address those issues. Our staff wear multiple hats, so we have counselors that are not specifically tasked to look at gender-based violence, but also assigned to other areas within the hospital. So I think having a dedicated program in place that's very focused on gender-based that would definitely improve the health capacity in response to gender-based violence. So unfortunately, with the lack of funding, and funding is always an issue across the board. So it's not just having, I want to point out that it's not just having the right number of people, the adequate number of staff, but also having the staff with the right set of skill. So hence training is a capacity issue that we need to address, and I'm very grateful for UNFPA support. 2 weeks ago, Dr. Titi, who was here, was able to provide trainings to a lot of our nurses, social workers, case workers, and case managers, and some mental health counselors. They were also part of that training, so we appreciate the support from UNFPA. Then 2 weeks after that, there was also another training on data capacity. Jessica from Bangkok, I think, with UNFPA, did another round of, came to Palau and did a 2-day training, I think, for all the key players on how to really use data to guide the decisions in terms of making interventions for gender-based violence. So I wanted to highlight the importance of training, the funding that we need to support the work that we do, and the support for the implementation of the Family Protection Act, which is through the Memorandum of Understanding.
Thank you, Director Scher. I think wearing multiple hats is a Palauan trend. I believe we all do that. I just want to ask one more question of you. You spoke about the capacity and training and having the right kinds of staff. Earlier, you talked about the prevalence when you were doing your opening remarks. What's your perspective on a proposed prevalence study, repeating a prevalence study, and its role in guiding both prevention activities and strengthening response services?
So I think, as I mentioned earlier, it's been over 10 years since we did the last.
Just over 10 years, correct.
Yeah, last VOW studies, which was funded and supported by UNFPA. So I think the Vice President and I had a discussion on this some time ago about the importance or the need to have another round of study, a population-based survey. And I say that because the data that we have are mostly administrative data and institutional data, which is good because it tells what services we provide. But I think for us to really understand the burden of the issue out in the community, we need to do another round of VOW studies to get a better understanding of what the situation is and whether or not we have our interventions that were created back in 2013 to address those issues are actually working or not. So it's important to have another round of a population-based survey to really guide our policy and interventions.
Thank you, Director. I think that sounds really great. Now I would like to address the most important member of our multi-sectoral approach to responding to family and gender-based violence, which is, of course, our civil society partners. In this case, we have the Palau Red Cross Society. First, I want to thank PRCS for being a staunch supporter in our support of victims. I know that in my time at the Ministry of Justice, I have personally called on you, Michelle, to tap into PRCS's social support services. Can you share a little bit about the PRCS single incident emergency program, I believe? And just tell everybody what it is and what's offered in that program.
Malungil total beklaat. So yes, we've done introductions sa ulel so nga ka Michelle Raueta. Courier Russell, the Dulwasing Health and Social Services Unit, Obisrigi, Palau Red Cross Society. So atara urere la obviously kidra sel health dra pala Red Cross Society tegi del daltali alila wasing single incident emergency program. ORC tel single incident emergency program makora wal ngani nga two parts ringi. Ngani nga igel nga wadadul wasing disaster related. So al suko mungguk to kara disaster related let's say for example ang malmleng ngani nga klol telal day sel dilul ang nga landslide malubang ko ra career al mura single al household adra disaster management ta kuk kim kay nga sewe respond al mura way gigid al situation al provide assistance and then sel kuk tungura to ko rarwa social services ang ngidil social issue al pertain al mura household sa gid ya kuk officer gid ra health respond al morngi song to ko ra protection gender inclusion ay gigid ya amo fall under sa del Health and Social Services Unit del Buktora SIE. Tiang wal kada mo sing immediate lifeline assistance sel di sob aklia at mangidi bol or oil egida lingkar ngiyel more permanent situation el support yourself family. Makadamul wasing wal lifeline assistance lol nga sir sa del single al household. Ay gel niya the provide mo household standard lendir ka kada borsel point tel koramal mla mo sub edel ngidil ni the accommodator ngi so ay gel niya wal standard dal nges wal top del mo household provision ra basic needs so ngani nga igel dalang okol most pe anges ra to kora kal makada provide non perishable food items malubagi blo almas ra gift card ang garangal sa lobal mo aray gel niya lospe. Ngari niya gel tudulwaseng water, sanitation and hygiene items, wash items. Blool ngari ngil tetel gay kita tidak standard del tetel gimol top der ngil ngari niya hygiene tudulwaseng hygiene kit. Ngari niya tokora umangat maklela patenged madalang akledra alsel. Adirekal niya mal blool kumdasang pertain and mortegi del tokora violence. Sab mamal provide a safe shelter. So we have some locations al secured. Kada obviously kita el provide a safe shelter al mora ngidil situation whether ang household fire ang tukara violence ang rang ang sa edal house are victims for up to 72 hours. Ay gaya ko ra ang aringel ngeso and then of course ang aringar volunteers rigid tirgaya mal ula the backbone raw la obis ra Red Cross our volunteers rigidal support ra tiragidal affected the victims as far as training our volunteers are trained ra to wa psychological first aid ay gayida sel kora immediate response al mora victim al sab el provider ngi mang kora mga adu orangi o lakli emesang al mong rangal ngeswa sab edal ngul mesang sel dalang oklam Trigal volunteers rigid spread throughout tropical states. So ngidil kora lesang family laws peangya so all report tal may or ang dirikal ngaringi gigidil referrals from Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Health. We've also received calls from Omakasang, Mapalaw Parents Empowered, Gaigal al other persons with disabilities, mo involved at kora violence. We've received calls to respond to those types of situations. So ikaya kora ang aringil assistance provided and as I mentioned initially tianga di kora di sob aklia dalong okle madirekal tarawera malingar tiral mora other services at sab elal either ang tukora counseling tukora alda adu ang tukora or agi trial connector tier with families al sab adilal provide a more permanent housing support al more family while the or getting their selves together. So I think kaya ko ra talang tingil tel program ra SIE dire kal ngariya so ay kay wal response dire kal gira mal dire ko ra malisi era to ko era ko ranklel prevention promotion I guess. So ngariya dire kal youth programmer kamamal tom ko do ngariya mula sa Red Action yang hadir kata kora developer ngiyat program and youth-led program will promote at tokoy older elementary or elderly, mar persons with disability, letrigaya, most the times ito mo victim ra al metro ra tel single incident emergency program. So ay kaya ko ra ngaringi ya a hotline nga hotline a 775 PRCS 775-7727 etel dengwa dekal dil hotline or ten direkal hotline darwa tokoras kelaras amangrang. Then so kung mangaring ya tokora violence or any situation lokora ngaring ya molat kalwasen sa bela Red Cross support ragay gidel needs kom ti kadong ngaring ngi dil time eng edel respond dal morangi dil situation. So lang.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you, PRCS, for having that program, and thank you, Michelle, for personally delivering this program and helping out victims. Lastly, before I let you go, can you share any challenges you face in the delivery of this program and any partnerships that you think would be beneficial to strengthening?
Thank you, Ms. Alilay. And ako lingit tamak mo malakoy at ako nga para da ko ra momik sa malso ko mga nga rolela. Anges rat ko ra training mga rangal sa paril support rigid tiral partners rigid et tiral remengs. So when it comes to challenges, and I have some in mind. So the challenges, it's a fairly new program. It started. So the program's been existing since Palawan Red Cross started, and I think you only know of it. Kung matingiling plool sila nga niya toko rase sa pangaral mo rata lang okla kato ko Red Cross alwase alang nga niya bay lang ngarang etangal mas critical victims elanget mlangar segid mla grow mal katamal man nga suli ra support ra almer obi sergit luul man na mo sab edal lolto daway gay gidel nga sul morar at so dakal dil elan namo dakal dil legal donated dal bay las edel top dal murar adam la mo sab edel mo house rar victims maway kay gidil el ngeswal sab edel top them. So sector say it's still a fairly new program. The challenges we face would probably be so we do have an SOP now developed on how to respond to these situations, but again it's still a learning process. We get new cases we've never come across before, where we need to learn how to better respond to those situations. And we're very lucky that we're always working with partners responding to these situations. And there's also a lack of data, which I'm glad that we plan on doing this population survey, because we really have no sort of baseline data on to make informed decisions and strategic decisions on how to respond and even prevent waigagital situations and to improve the services that we are providing to the victims. We also have a need for training. So I can say that the staff, the volunteers, we have training on psychological first aid, gender-based violence, in emergencies. So this is a larger scale training that we've received in terms of emergencies, but there's no training received on responding to victims of single households encounter violent situations in violence. So like something that we're looking to also have training for is gender in humanitarian action, and that would probably pertain more to helping us in responding to single incidences. Mental health and psychosocial support training, protection from sexual exploitation and abuse, PSEA. I'm gonna spell these things out because they're very, there's a lot of acronyms. And just really having our staff and volunteers trained in victim-sensitive situations, dealing with having victims who are persons with disabilities or with children. So a lot of times the volunteers get a bit hesitant on, dealing with those sensitive situations when it involves children or with persons with disabilities. So it's always me or like the senior staff who would be going out to do the the response, and it would be really great if we empower our volunteers to be able to do the responses themselves, as imagine if it was in a different state, that they will be the actual first responders to these situations. And yes, we also have repeat situations. If you didn't know, like, we see the same families coming through again every year for the assistance. So I'm again glad that we'll be working with the partners to do the population survey, to really develop some sort of monitoring and evaluation of the program, and as well as internally and working with the partners, so that we do not continue to see people who are repeatedly coming in for the assistance. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it, and I thank all our partners for this work. Really, we would probably not be able to respond to these situations by ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Good news, you guys are all done with me. Now, I'd like to just open the panel up to any questions from the audience. If anyone has any questions for any of our panelists, a request for more information, this is the time. If anybody has any questions, ang nga niya karim for trakal nga panel, di raise sa imam bring the mic a leko. Sulang for there.
Sulang malungit tutaw marbekla. Question na ka basically ko the open question and more kidel kora brut artial urgor na mo 10 years implement artial FPA. Ang kora sa mo mengek na sing base regi kidel kora incidents malubang cases na mora attention regarding ngaraigel ko mal cause is it alcohol related drug abuse ngaraigel ko mal or is it a cultural thing sa to ka mal mom danglik na ngaraigel mal ula ay gidel ko domestic violence, especially violence against women and young children.
Thank you, Justice Rudim. As a justice on the court hearing the most, I think you are best situated to answer that, since she sees all the cases coming through. She's probably able to speak.
Hello? Yeah, okay. I don't know if you can hear me well.
Check.
Oi.
Check.
I wanted to just comment that, first of all, and this is, I am aware of this because of the training that we have all received, and I know that it is something that, it's the very basic training that we should really think of taking before we handle cases. And that is, domestic abuse is not caused by alcohol, is not caused by anger, it's about power and control. And I will give you a prime example. I think all of us are aware of that, of people who drink alcohol. But not every one of those people that drink alcohol abuse their family. Okay, so that's the number one thing I want to point out. The reason why it's control is you want to, it's a behavior that a person engages in order to get control over somebody else of the situation. So it has nothing to do with alcohol or your sense of anger, because studies have been shown that actually they say they're angry and they say they lose control. I lost control, I couldn't help it. But when you think about it, when they damage the property, most of the time it's the other person's property that was damaged. They didn't go and break their own cars, they didn't go and break their TV, or it's controlled. So they technically maybe didn't really lose control. Yes, alcohol lowers your inhibition, so you're not able to maybe think better, but it's not the reason why domestic violence occurs. It's about power and control, and I say this because this is what the studies have shown, and this is what all people, all trainings and conferences that we would go to would teach us that. And Sarah, just in response to the question about what causes it. So it has nothing to do with alcohol, and so our focus should not be on prevention of alcohol, but really teaching people on how to manage, emotions and how to resolve problems. A lot of times you find cases sa say, ulang ka din, di ka mak acting na sila kam lutam or what. But see, you're using violence to control the situation instead of figuring out ways to how to manage and have a civil conversation. Yes, we all have problems. Yes, arbek laada mo rin mondar alsela adalang aklir mar ngalobantir arir mar ngalgid. Hindi arbek laada mo o kaba ade maloko makita tol in order to resolve the problem. Sulang.
Just come out follow-up question. So since it's about power, ngarakora suggestion la amendment tertial el ruli mo focus sa igidel. Ato am titul draft la ruli mo malum policy ruli mo wal Relatriar adam matamo duol manage power creed clarity. Help mo understand.
And unfortunately, as a sitting judge, adra judiciary, and I'm not able to comment on make that kind of comment or recommendation. But I know our service providers are here, all our partners are here, and they do the work, so they can probably make those specific comments about that. Sulang, and I apologize. Okay.
Thank you, Justice Rudim. Was there anybody else? Let me grab the mic.
Lehulturge Vice President Boktor. Malmerang asule me Vice President, me kulturge di Vulkoltor Belaw. Malmerang asule me Vice President ra invitation merang mamakti omterang malteral may bel ngarteng merang asule. Merang asule me anora just kamang asaw Rudim lesola tial to kaya akong maraluase gidel belaw ang ngaringirigid. Awasya ka makarang control igal plakar dalet omrelet baul de suet lang karingira imama del may mang diakatobe saige ekumeral waset taratol the legislate we cannot legislate human behavior. It depends on us, the people sitting here and others who are listening. And really thank you, service providers, those who are in the front line. Really thank you, because it's something that we have in us. As Palawans, we have. And how do we control our behavior at home, within the family, within the clans, within the community? And we sort of have forgotten about that. And so I do believe that we have an avenue, and maybe us in the community, for us who are with the community, again, also share with the ideas that are around here. And we thank you for having this Family Protection Act. Something, kadukara obang Vice President, hindi ka kalbola al-waisel sa edalo tuti. Mangtarato ko imla makatmok le mal marang asula la or marang asuli wase boss of edlo yak tegi del te al so lang makatmok rigid makla rigid mar galigid
Tokubet san mora rangaligid. Rangaligid amo batel belura tarak labsay. Ngaralo brula darali. Mosbelos clear rangaligid. Mendia kalabort kay gidel teleta il dia kal suada ngara alsel. Akbra nga sular adar ospital. Tara to koy wase kadmor ospital en marokul kar. Alubal bebi rata me kalmet ob ira rapay. Rablit. Mendia kada salma murtel baraygal sebedel kutmok gidel ngara belu. Ob tebe rangal ka. Makla adar kita makla kita ngarambol tulasi ngomli merom maul oi waisay oigalol gotias maral ngomli merom set wiga sel ngarngil dimlang ngarngil wasen kan soal adred soal aklisi soal igerogul linyada kalungil ngara kadbla obeseri kadbla obeser o mangul marata matang tigay gidi aktu yak medingil wasat tarak blarnya program berkami atarak lebsel wasen double okay semlang ang program. Hindi na kalau si civil time, ang isip na program na Vice President na karamol kulasay, akal subelek farm, kalabus, ayam ngirtoy, ayam sepedal mutologis, al sumang mlaringi, at makarang yung balosis, baklad maklang aragit, basi civil time baklad kauklat, at kauklat na at di ongra lata lang clear, ang tinga lang clear, at kauklat karado lang ulit, hindi kalutolo pridel mal mo kloet abular nga. Ikay kita so kalk magay kumal misulat kalk di bilan sulak.
There's more. Was there any other questions in the audience?
Alungil tutaw Vice Presidente. Inga kakpeka chanson inga tolong tiada kabe no rai. Imal di tulgera soal moget. Ako ting wat yagi dil forum nengar ngit yang. Ikan dak sabe da kam dak travel mar adravelu bolo dengi. Leng bildung ra adra gortik masih. Tengah ngit tiga dil dimla lo dengi sing bakara lo langis wa. Ing adimla lo nalla. Badi gerak masing sabe dil lo ngagi dil forum ra galbek state. Mar adal bolo dengi. Ongirul gera igerogul laadal mlotu tak limit rakra lula FPA. Ikan das bidro la forum retil di regmal ul understand dik masaigal ay kala menda ka dolamal leng. Kamal leng mo galbus. Igat dum ko doger tiang ngaring ya. Ato na rin nga krayray. Mit rakra osisilla. Ilan tamang galbus. Karangal lang nga school. Ngar elementary. Hindi na biktima ra family di tiga di eloy takamat. Sige di agi ko mensulang.
Thank you for the question. I think Madam Vice President can, being the
mata malungit tutaw malmisaw la tigal maasar may brel misale mas bilong silbelaw ipang saineng kel nga ri silbelaw aldung mata maomul tigal other olbira kalulaw floor leader aldabel ma delegate kamsong ma first lady matigal governor sa governor naro ma governor sukuma komal masaw le maasal ngartiang le kidar maas kidia ongara ala talong okla ongara rarangala ka tirgal be id sel bod makatagal be id tokora diregal mo al tarangal keda diregal kora ama kay ngasew mang malungil sel gerang kagidali Mr. Joshua algirel sel outreach Justice Rudy Director Sharon ka ospital we makatatal dorul outreach until do mong karam losto be ado ko klamutan mo start again amlo girel moringa taleta el dobo do dengya roguil ngar lirar adal tira amrut telurior mangaringi sel adom ko dong rig mong MOU rang lel Attorney General mangar lirar police mangar lela ministry ra Health and Human Services, Michael Bebira agencies, Ministry of Education, Judiciary, mangkora mo bilang taklam sel dora ila dora mga odora osisiul tokoy at ngara mangkora wa ngara tal
lo maray le madangali at taletay ra pathway ma kamal masalti da governor sa ngartiang madamo mga adu mo governor mo sabi edalo omer gartiara al sela igal al state tergit bol sabi edal maral mga adu di hotel era domo ra urior ang maegor kami ar maas mo madangali tiang amang komal masal no sabi ilmer el ang madamo ka dengel gidel tegi lurior gidel dal mo mga mok karingi sel longerung olgera wa sengaria yeso si el gukmora tirgel tira motutak kartial Family Protection Act. Adokora awal ngaringi tirkal partners sergit UNFPA ma IOM madamol ngi tangase ortil mo sabe edalomer kara aurioran mortir kita tialore selwaseng mal ngani aklol ngal song star counselors Ministry of Education mudira kamlo mudira counselors the Ministry of Health and Human Services kaya Director Sher Madraisa dire kang nga sang sela counselor so wal ko rangal sang sela aldum mang kora dire ka boda sabe edal mi mokol kut moklap tokol services al mortir kay gidila ding malmaral to ko ya giredolol nga sortir mlaring atar o maral planning nga kama justice rudim al mora balural seng no chilenda al sel do bong itir kay gidil tira nga ramadala korta me leng lego example rachero mangkora sabi lo example ring magimlo kakawad magimo ra korta magimo ramadala chat engi mendire kal ngarse ya chat cook referring mo ra igel services il offer el morngi se adirga da borngir el all time se lo ramadala a justice rudim en the more sele Aring counseling ngarap prevention unit for domestic violence. Hindi dia kalsal beto kal korawngil service providers as edal kutmok kal mortir kay gidil tira perpetrators mal uben tira kay gidil al tira wal mo tutak kay gidil to Family Protection Act. Yakti so kal mo kora ender kay gidil answer nga kal mora Mr. Joshua wase Admal marenga sulela aleit Senator Kathy Gasoley. Ngegi diamle introduce tial Family Protection Act pe ra Senate mlo sabe mlo o mga illegal tablol houses o korea president to review nga sign ringil mola ra thinking in November 2012. Manggida tial wad ko omesingil atroy era mang aigel points el raise a floor leader el de bel amral gira de lo mesingil el was 10 years later ngara gira del gutmok kal mo o amen the tial la al mom subo karingi akmat ngel waseng amon nga discussion ringi ruriw lakti so kal bring up rawan el point and maybe asabela awriw le the discussion na Dr. Titil as el gigidel ngarcelo bayra orange radil toktangal ngarse ra UNFPA ngari sel no drop policy sukom kamo tutak le blalbor obisra aging giril ti malamol maldol move forward the law about tutak le ngari ngar bebira el ako sabel ngo to singel aging digel kuk black reng asa Ngaringar baby rardil, alde kalsari lo to takar barir. Hindi ungil ere ko takangal. Le kamil maasa syuka ngargid. Ruda la chero ma kuspe ertir el malaw daw da selabor niya el sungula Fred ang belik sungumi ang aka muringil wasi ang aka uspe el mamoy tertegi da ludo. Ngok tamale ka mang malobra da nga ka malospe erak ludo. Masel suko mang moringa wala arab al sela talong okla ing swakal dil muk hindi ako ais le ko ais ya ru dala chero mo trilo miska ka udo mang dal sal mal blo al sab edlo ais mal do ma da maru retial londi ber el anga mok mulwase mar ko do ais yaklabel ko laklang arigit o sa akal merigit Men si edal nga radalong okgit marangal git. Di sa git yal agir edal mo meseringi. Floor leader delegate kamsong sa git yal no drop policy. Ding angariya te alal bay dir kada nga ministry at justice. Edo ko angariya mediation angaral resolve ngi. May dalway gel losa da dir pra o
sele again the program al mlaringil siyang double okay masubalik farm bakti so I'll bring up say we need to maybe mutulomes say yel no drop policy lang to karate kal si iral report talang tiriral more say the situation kora mo niya magkitra dulong le di kita ma adala beith kom sulang
Sulang, Madam Vice President. Mangyang of our audience members. Sulang.
Ali. Ngil tutaw. Ang klara tublay lilaw ngartngalom tera Western Pacific Island sa Inga. Makmali so kalaw nga sulala Mr. Vice President telte al invitation and blame mong losop ekan may. So after tirakal adam mga adul gira legal available the social services and this wakal mo include our Westcare direct lool malas malomes alwasay ngarigal gaps social services al sela society al sa paamalol ng SEO provide so bimlakal sa paamal rulia full surveyra al sela blurvela al momdengel wasay ngarang klelay mal el gap sa society especially social services those pe magidi mlebay sa igel guk dairal gimulab at the time amal some services, mga available tutoring services for our students at 1st to 8th grade. Madirek available educational services or workshops and more couples, more singles. I give the workshops. Ang healthy relationships, positive parenting. Financial literacy facilitated through our partnership with the Bank of Guam. So I'm really excited to be here this morning. And our office is located at the top side. The center is called Berdil Belao Center. It's open daily. If you're interested, please stop by or do give us a call. Ma'am Sulang.
Thank you so much, Tublay. I'm very excited to see your services develop and become more mainstreamed, especially for victims and families of victims. Looking at the time, we're sort of running right on time. I would just like to open it up for one more question from the audience, if anybody has a pressing question for any of the panelists. Okay, if there's no more questions, I would just like to thank our panelists for subjecting themselves to my questioning and to opening themselves for information from the audience. As we conclude this impactful discussion, I want to express my profound gratitude to our esteemed panelists. Your expertise and dedication have eliminated the complexities of gender-based violence services and family violence, guiding us toward effective solutions. Your insights are not just words, they're catalysts for change. And I know that with our funders, our partners, and our legislators here present, we'll be able to work together for coming up with more solutions and more preventative services for victims of family and gender-based violence. Thank you for your inspiring words, collaboration, and fostering understanding and championing a safer environment for all. Thank you. If I could ask the MC, Ms. Roxanne Sewell, to come in umakrada program again. Sulang.
Thank you so much, Elilai, for that wonderful panel, and thank you, everyone, for your participation. Ilakadang agenda rigi del wabo the endorse amended Family Protection Act Memorandum of Understanding and Referral Pathway. Mang diswa kalaw ay selwa sel MO draft del MOU amle nga ramadir tigay del panelist. Almle gimawder ringi tegi del Family Protection Act Working Group worked on it, including Sera Mande, ang sabril convene a meeting at Tira Palau Royal Resort with all the members of the working group and went over line by line of the MOU. And the meeting was facilitated by Ms. Pushpi of the IOM. IOM is one of our partner in this work on in Palau. And so the comments that Associate Justice Rudim have been incorporated into this final draft of the MOU. We were able to receive the final comments from Minister Jenkins yesterday. So one of our legal staff at the Office of the Vice President, Ms. Petra May, has put all those comments into the revised, to the amended MOU, and it's ready for signing, as Director Sher mentioned earlier. Ding model sa bedel goramal signers el MOU leng ngar ministers of Island ma Chief Justice ang iray galaw mandira kal model sa el signers el alsil sa magi olngit mabol sa el segi del signing el mo or sel time el bodo targa clean dira kal ngar last el forum ergi der tegi del 16 days of activism ra next week ra Tuesday ra Palacia Hotel. Sabi edal mo tegi del signing el more segi del meeting mandi el time ebol sabi edal gora di ngua concurrence certificate del egal agencies el wase tegi del MOU endorse ringi egi dang artel witness certir segi dia modo dar really el bol start tegi del outreach el mora state ma outreach el mora ni del al dabe el adang mang so amelgadime musesel girele Associate Justice Rudim or Director Sher adang dimil basul mang okay. Oh, oi.
If I may, actually, igal kakarosel agencies, nga niya MOU giblem executing back in 2014. Tiya mo mga number 3 amendment. Leng over the years, kada kuk mamatigro kasi nga kuk sa beedel expand, nga sa beedel kuk mongod, amang tiya hindi akal katenged al mot makaloriore kay nga sira dalongaled. Amang this is the latest amendment based on the latest recommendations ma consultations el gibla mora. So sulang.
Dal ngit madabas tiyak lol prot algora o tiya sayid el endorsement tarigi dimna sa mamal remula a few copies of the amended MOU and provided it to the panelists, but Vice President has asked that we make a copy and distribute it to everyone. Al tegi del amended MOU ang malblakatak already ra yegi the Royal Agency from the Attorney General's Office, Bureau of Public Safety, Health, Judiciary, Ministry of Education. We will share that copy. Era the bora next session maldigo ay sir maasa sa ko magtakangale Vice President mal conscious mal madangali sir ngale beregal meeting mang gira dal ngartiang mo sa edel sign up ko mamaya alumiw ko mamaalumiw tirigel mo ko makal mal leroy del mail $15 tiragi del adra UNFPM los ilmas kita game ko magtakangale kada mal umre kada tel program rigi di era the borsel next nya omalal shasing edira kalmorong singa yidel nya koramal tokubet sel okya karigi del alsils edi bodo recognize ra Governor Sharp sa kumal mlame join ergi del alsils diragal Japan Judge the Affair Miss Hajiwara for attending on behalf of Ambassador Origasa. Thank you so much for coming. Diragal mlame state representatives ng artiang logi wa tigingel chairman ra Governors Association Governor Paloy at tamno sa May mga nga IRI State dira kalo Mr. Coro State ng artiang gigida legislator Reagan, Sidoy, el ngartiang era Ira State Legislature. Gigida tublay lilaw ra Weskerm la introduce herself, el mo dagragel nga civil service organizations and NGO Director Sharon mention Bango ma SKO samsamela klangalakala ma gigida baby ra organization el gida partner. Dira kalang arte Ron Ledgerwood ra Micronesian Legal Service. Pushpi is here on behalf of IOM. Pushpi is the focal point of IOM to the Palau, FSM, and RMI. Madira el Gelmered el Gukahedra Palau office el Johan Senerath who was here earlier. So going to the photo session, Gagi del Edward Anastasio namos ilos peringi limla mo private businessmen. Digel nga ngarel belaw magimle ako rangun la seme mola aklel tial meeting. Mongolingit to sebol sebe edro kul me korangat tegi del madal mal masawlam asbilung regal Christmas tree makadamal kora ma Christmas light tamang gida dal nga siya sing el ngar bitaragang engora holiday season. Mang agi di mabebe agi ngal el mortegi del madal tia manguk nganyar dang oklet tigel sabarira mora amod orat tiang engal Edward already lo padron. Maka kadi ngora ngarak mungge sel maka di outaka nga ladang diungil basul. Okay. O unsab emil di magi ngal el mertang el madal.
Akti so kalau isu sel no mengiri ngua ka pirtiar rogit tial MOU egi mo sign ri awriu bongo mo mavenge ngulo sing rang leader bulis ma sel so magi meet tal tiagi makatmok le kamiu agi mo accountable le kamiu mavenge to al sel tiang badik cook per sel part trabi PS lendi telal bullet point se ko aise era al sel tial MOU tiagi dal mo lulia kapil le kor kamiu. A Bureau of Public Safety, ako ngel wasay ngaringi at atlet ang sedrol gani mung syukang regit el dia ka report ta family violence mal ubeng neglect dia ka daw eyes mabi PS kami tang wayal kat maklira aran rirar bulis luwasay tawmol nga sew el low eyes el more adrablu el gira lay gagi di tokora o akra al sela tulungal ka ma neglect sel kora amoy ta ngar aled maluben ti kadungil kutmok lang ngar aled al sela talang aklet may gaigi di agel bol konge abi PS al mo mga tmok gaigi di agel policy procedures nga al sel ti al MOU al bolong tmok la arbulis 12 makot sel suko mga niya adal niya soal low eyes al girela uldigra al sela dalong ok mal ubeng kora rabatak al teletal al sela adalang ok ya adalo rio Bureau of Public Safety el nguse report el ngwa report agirel gut makliya rior el seriously girel mo blakan ngul gut maklitel rior el wayal el crime or assault el waya be kroguyel el teletal ra aurioro longot mok gire la crime atal malela la malubang assault emo blakatak kalol tirak laigel klisi irar bulis ngiangar eungel self family protection act tiangar al sel title 21 ra Palau National Code bulis adia kabolol kabayar adal tira sorry report adia kabol tomer tir al sumang kalingi a victim aswal reporter tial aleba ng malubeng uldi kal mlahapen al sela dalang aklil bulis adire al mo mga wall orang kal victim tamo make sure al wasay tomes al wasay ngramo o ngirang kal victim oriol lo bengela victim lo sigo o sa aklil arbulis adire kal mongusel ngra al refer ang kay gid el victim al moraigel referral service al ngaringi way selul lo ngaringi atirkal bolis el wasay first responders ang ngara ikagidale patrol anding ngaringi gel seleme patrol tungol masangay gidel adal ngi amo connect with the service providers amo si el color ang kagidale Michelle Ueda dire kal ngaringa training al bol logiw sel office professional standards etamo o trainer ar bulis ilgire la ikay delurior a Family Protection Act. Direkal logi utigi di office ra professional standard ito mo make sure ang ngaringyar enough al bulis al train the victim sensitivity tamo madu lawyer sel respond mo ra uldi ka ra talong okle tamadu al mga adu ra victim digek mo lasang makaralo nga sure ngel victim direkal suko ma victim uspera BPS al mong yang mayabilel. Sometimes sa ulti kala happen ra erukloram ututa ko la bulis mem tongoy ikaw etamla ko la Michelle manglamungan niya sabi emal moringil makasalba akal ngara at tarabasyon ding hindi ka ba le omngilo angal geng dia ka mola babile langal ka tulangal kama ay gigi dia gira la bulis dire kalol nga sew almo o ngoy ikaw almo mang sabi emal may ay gel mo spe bile mang maklok langal kals ko mangangal ko lobeng game marbuli sang arsem to make sure was a alelak la tial talong ok o ko de dia ka ako arabar ka sabi emal may gigi dia kalma mungal game klok lem ka ma arangal game dire kal mo sabi ira BPS ngar alir low ay circle was a ngaranga sel te alem al file a civil protective order segidal lulsa daringa justice rudi maka o email process Direkal mo girel nga niya priority regal protective orders to make sure that to serve o regi da follow up mang girel make sure waseng ka girel stay akmo to spare nga kamatchero malso ko mga kamatchero may nga niya stay away order let's say chero babay ko kulto takar nga kalekmle nga kya perpetrator stay away order ang girel matingit mas nga kadi abokedra blay mati abokedra at chero marapitara marbuli sa girin madingay kam sa the report wasay kagidal marmara blaim kagida udu al marmara siray matasiral me make sure wasay nga katiak para siray pa may gigid gel girel mo niya coordination lo bangela obisra marshal okay long top the order Justice Rudim, one of the justices, ya Marshall adire kaloba kapiringe mo, surberingin mo ringgel adal niya girel stay away ya kapia merar bulis ngiril madangalise. May kay gidegel bebira emotomo kolekta data malmol mo ngartia luriora Family Protection Act Working Group. Mang gigid ya kuk lir bulis yang nganya lela court mang lela ngara ospital, mga lela Office Attorney General, mga lela Minister Jenkins sa Education. Maturulya kapingol mas kami mo madangaliye, komal mongil oiwi mo tit mo ngarangal alam, selgi mo tau tategi del Tokora Family Protection Act. Komsulara kaloreng alurareng sa.
Mang Gagidang kal photographer gidal gora wasen da kabay me pol mereka aigal aldo adu edub uras shasing triya gidar bebir adal do Mr. Tidet huk maral mesois bama pol sabrir bekal adal me edub ursel group photo. So at this time this is what we have been really excited to announce today. The honor to have with us the Director of United Nations Population Fund, Director Yori Kato. This is his first time to Palau. Welcome. He just arrived into Palau on Sunday evening and then had his bilateral meetings on Monday, meeting with Minister of State Aitaro. As we know, our president is currently in Dubai for the COP28 meeting, so he couldn't meet with him on Monday. And then yesterday, Vice President was able to take him to Peleliu so that he was able to see and pay respect in Peleliu. And then here he is with us today, and he's here with his staff. As Vice President mentioned, Dr. Titi is sitting in the front. Dr. Titi is from Uganda, Nigeria, and this is her second time to Palau, and she's with the UNFPA, as well as Prosi. Prosi has been with our office working on preparing for today and been with us for 3 weeks, Prosi. So I think some of the ladies may have seen you walking from Palau Hotel to our office and back. So that's Prosi. Thank you. Then we have in the back Evelyn. Evelyn is our sister from Pohnpei, but she's working with the RC, the Resident Coordinator Office in Pohnpei. So she's the focal point from the RC's office to Palau. And as well as Alisi. Alisi is a special assistant to Director Kato. So thank you very much, UNFPA. They will be handing over critical equipments to the Ministry of Health, Justice, Statistics, and the working group, Judiciary. As you can see over there, they will be handing over tablets that we will use in these respective agencies to collect data on cases and be able to use this data to inform policy decision within these respective agencies. They also have other equipments, steel cabinets that they have delivered to the Division of Criminal Investigation that they will be using in their domestic violence cases as well as cases in general, and the equipment that they will be delivering to health. So without further ado, we'd like to invite Director Kato to come and give us his special remarks to the people of Palau this morning on, as we celebrate 16 days of activism to and unify our efforts to end violence against women, girls, men and boys, everybody in Palau. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chief of Staff, and High Chief Tess of Kolol Bilun, Honorable Vice President and the Minister of Justice, Madam Uduch Singabal Senior, His Excellency, the Ambassador of the United States, Mr. Joel Allen Lake, Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Australia, Madam Richelle Turner, and other distinguished delegates from the diplomatic corps, honorable members of the Parliament, honorable governors, honorable Minister of Education, Dr. Dale Jenkins, honorable Acting Minister of Health, Madam Chair, Associate Justice, and other distinguished officials from the police, various other government offices, dear fellow colleagues from the United Nations system, including the International Organization of Migration, IOM, and my own UNFPA. Distinguished representatives from the Palau Red Cross Society, Bango, SKO, and other civil society, women and youth organizations of Palau. Ungil Tutau. And a very good morning to you all. As was mentioned, this is my very first country visit to your beautiful country of Palau. And I wish I could address to you in your local Belau language. I'm trying, I'm learning. But please forgive me that I'm going to address to you only in English today with a Japanese accent. It is indeed a great honor for me on behalf of the United Nations Population Fund, or UNFPA Pacific, Pacific Sub-Regional Office based in Fiji that serves 14 Pacific countries, including Palau from Fiji, to join you in this very important high-level national forum convened by the Palau Family Protection Act, a working group to discuss intersectoral actions to address the scourge of the gender-based violence. And huge congratulations on the remarkable milestone of the endorsement of the amended Memorandum of Understanding for the interministerial coordinated actions to prevent and respond to gender-based violence just now. This accomplishment is extremely timely because this gathering today is being convened during the global campaign for the 16 days of activism against violence against women. I'd like to first extend UNFPA's applaud and a huge appreciation to you, Madam Vice President and Minister of Justice, Honorable Uduch Singabal Senior, for your leadership and coordination of the Family Protection Act with a view to ensuring the protection of the women and girls from gender-based violence, including intimate partner violence, IPV, domestic violence, sexual abuse, economic, emotional, and all the other forms of gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is deeply rooted in social norms and values, stemmed from the power and control dynamics in a society, as highlighted by the Honorable Associate Justice, and it happens in a social environment where physical and sexual violence is pervasive and yet condoned and somehow perceived to be okay in this culture of silence and impunity. The impact of violence on the survivors and victims is enormous, especially on their physical, sexual, reproductive, mental, and psychological health, and also it impacts third party too, as mentioned by His Excellency, the US Ambassador. Violence can lead to death, if not physical injuries, suicide, lifelong trauma, and unwanted pregnancies. Sometimes survivors of violence have to give up their dream, be it occupational or education. Violence not only affects the victims themselves this way, but also it breaks the fabric of the household, the community. It causes a sizable economic loss to the entire country. And as was already discussed by the Acting Health Minister, Director Chair, and Honorable Associate Justice, in your country, Palau, 1 out of every 4 women, over 25% of them have reported that they experienced either sexual and or physical abuse in their lifetime committed by her intimate partner. Today, Palau has 18,000 population. And unless each one of us is empowered to fulfill our full potential, including the 8,000 plus Palau women and girls, there will be no real peace. There will be no real prosperity. There will be no sustainable development for Palau. GBV, as was just mentioned by the Madam Vice President, however, cannot be solved by any single sector or single ministry. And this is why today's high-level interministerial, intersectoral meeting convened by the Palau Family Protection Act Working Group is a very timely endeavor and another big step forward towards achieving a violence-free Palau through the whole of the nation approach. More than ever before, we need action from everyone. Protection is extremely important, as discussed by the Honorable Minister of Education earlier in the panel discussion, and for that, we need to address the social norms and culture, if any, that condone violence and reinforce power inequalities. We need to create more demand by the people and the communities for no more violence. We also need to continue to work on the supply side, meaning the response. We need to strengthen the capacity for service providers, as was discussed earlier, including the police, the judiciary, the health sector, including mental health and psychosocial support, both government and also CSOs, so that these offices and officers can tailor their respective responses to meet the survivors' unique individual needs, and where necessary, offer the referrals to the next level of intervention and support. And because gender-based violence cannot be solved by any single sector or any single office, we also need to strengthen the coordination among multiple stakeholders. Also, we need to strengthen the legal and policy framework and also ensure allocation of the sufficient resources, both financial and human, to ensure the holistic and integrated approach so that every woman and girl and every man and boy, including persons with disabilities in Palau, can live a dignified life, free of violence and any form of discrimination, abuse, and exploitation, leaving no one behind. And in this regard, I am glad that UNFPA has joined hands with the government of Palau to walk the talk. As was already mentioned by the Acting Minister of Health, Just in the last few weeks, UNAP has supported a series of training for service providers in Palau because the health sector is one of the most important sectors that provide services on gender-based violence. UNAP organized the training for a total of 21 clinicians, nurses, and case managers on the health sector's response to GBV. And also because any interventions, including actions to address GBV, would need quality disaggregated data for planning and executing such interventions. UNAP also conducted an induction training on collecting and analyzing data on violence against women for 8 frontline workers, including statisticians, the police, health workers, the judiciary, as well as civil society representatives. In addition to this capacity development training, as was mentioned, UNAP is procuring some equipment necessary for the work of various government offices which are implementing the Family Protection Act. And today, I am going to have the honor of handing over some of these donations, including the file cabinets and the 26 tablets to support the Palau Bureau of Statistics, law enforcement officers, and health workers who are the first responder to the GBV cases to ensure safe storage of GBV case files and evidence as an essential step toward maintaining the integrity of legal cases and ensuring justice is served for GBV survivors and the data is properly collected. In addition to these that you can see in front of you, UNFP will be also donating a biofridge, servers, cameras, sexual assault evidence collection kits, and then colposcopes during 2024. I'd like to take this opportunity also to place on record UNFP's appreciation to our funding partner, the European Union, because the EU-UN Spotlight Initiative enabled UNFPA to provide these trainings and in-kind contribution to the government of Palau. I am also personally grateful to His Excellency the U.S. Ambassador, Mr. Alan Drake, for his kindness and courage for sharing his inspiring personal testimony and story in addition to sharing the U.S. policy strategy and programs to address the gender-based violence. He is such an admirable, staunch advocate for gender equality, and I am proud to be with him in the same room today to listening to His Excellency. As I conclude my remarks, I would like to reiterate UNFPA's recommitment to supporting all 14 Pacific countries, including Palau, in addressing gender-based violence, because UNFPA has a vision or dream of achieving zero gender-based violence. Yes, we are not talking about just reducing gender-based violence. We are talking about eradication of the gender-based violence, because as I said earlier, back in 2014, I'm not too sure about the current status, hence the need for data, but at least 1 out of 4 Palau women and girls were subject to either sexual or physical violence in your lifetime committed by your intimate partner. If these statistics improves, let's say, 1 out of 5 women, should we be happy? If it reduced to 1 out of 10 women, should we be satisfied? And I am going to say no, we should not be satisfied until we see zero. That's why we say zero violence against women and girls, zero gender-based violence, but not just violence against women and girls. I would say zero violence, period, against men, against boys, too. None at home, none at school, no violence at workplace, on the streets, in the remotest island on the normal days, but also in the midst of a climate crisis like natural disaster. No violence whatsoever. Zero is the only acceptable number. So no more business as usual, no more complacency. Let us accelerate and scale up our joint efforts. Let us get out of our comfort zone. Let us please stop pretending that violence is permissible because of our culture or tradition or norms. It is not the culture that commits violence. It's us human beings. And let us do something new, something faster, something bigger, and then let us collectively make the biggest difference ever. I make a pledge here today. UNFPA will not stop. I myself will not stop until we see no violence. And you may say, I'm a dreamer, as John Lennon said in Imagine. You may say, I am daydreaming, I'm not realistic. But we all know that human history is full of achievements about something that was initially considered to be impossible. I believe we can end the scourge of gender-based violence if we want it, if we work together. So apologize, I am talkative when I'm excited like now, but I will end by saying something that I often say. So this is a saying that our colleagues who are introduced from UNFPA Pacific Sub-Regional Office, Chief of Health Dr. Titi, who is from Nigeria, and also Prosi, who is from Uganda, who once shared with me this proverb from Africa, which goes like this: if you want to go fast, you go alone. But if you want to go far, we go together. Here we are together, so let's go afar. We UNFPA will go with you. Thank you once again for having me and us UNFPA here with you today. Kekumo Mesao. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Director Kato, for your remarks. At this time, I know Prosi wanted to do a handover ceremony. If we could get a few of the laptops and just tablets and just bring to the front, or they come over there? Okay. So maybe Director Sher, Justice Rudim, Minister Jenkins, Acting Director Gabriel Mavais.
Komal masaulo ko komkora witness ra kamamang Michael Alclalo. Komral masulo.
Director, Memutel Director, Gabriel, Kamutel Bandera ng Tigib Lageti. Di. Oh, ime mera shasi. It's okay. We have the boss in front. Chip May. Alilay. May. Mga shasing. Mr. Eduardo. So, Larry Avalos, il-witnesser tel handover ceremony. Thank you, Director Kato and UNFPA. We look forward to receiving the items the rest of the items in due time. But thank you so much. Malmasauler maasar akalorang aragamiu, especially tiragal adra olbil, mosabril joiner gid ma diplomatic corps. Kadamal larmeng sabtol aldaadu el total mer el ang. Como me stabilir tiragal adra UNFPA tobaila orange. So seguid el orange color, color el gora signifier seguid el campaign against violence, gender-based violence, family violence. Mang 16 days of activism, selgi moru lagay del community outreach. Diragal nga niya t-shirts, el mo sab LIOM, el provide, el mo sa amalguk Hermosa Sesay, el nga diragal mo gora nga niya orange color ringi. Tiang amaral every year, President whips October proclamation. El giral tegi del Urior for the past 3 years, continue el malmol mertegi del Urior. Magimal marang asulir arbekal adal no sa real partertel ceremony. Makadamal lolngitra gel niya mo last speaker regida mo sa el mrelo dakta kaya rogul el dadu roguy. Emal mlame sa amdri arbekal ad maurung uli regida tel Urior. Magel niya amle o rung ule del morar adar olbil wasengra uksabari remove el momalisi ertegi el Family Protection Act el gida auspe erngir bela el malisi protection family marangal ka. El alba al 10 years temel tegi del Family Protection Act ma tolngitra the Honorable Vice President Ragida Blurbela, Minister of Justice, udu usang baw Senior Bols El Mamski the closing remarks the buura photo session.
Kamal Masulang, Floor Leader Aldabel, First Lady Maasal Bilong, Governor Paloy, Tera Governors, Tiral Diplomatic Corps, Ngartiang, El Alzils, Floel Support Rigid, Ambassador Turner, Ambassador Lima, Mayu from the Japan Embassy, Omal Masulang for being here today. Masra May Barel, Ipang, Rizal Belao, Tiral Evangela Minister Jenkins ng Artiar Bulis, Acting Director Gabriel, Chief Ngiramanyor from the Palau Red Cross Society. Malsokan mo nga sulo yung el alsilsa. Mlo sabi darong city al do el alsilsa el global rule el girela o sabakle la arangal geda martulungal gargid. Sil damasaw der tegi del gender-based violence and tiang do dangalil tegi del Family Protection Act. El niya Lamo trui erraga trui ma since 2012 over 10 years el doriol implementary malmre nga sulela Justice Rudim segi del time and dirga senior chatra Court of Common Pleas malmre nga loriol lo siga arole lam gatmok laigel babiera mo sabe del mare del lunga o saba akalogi wa protective orders ra lolto bada court. Director Matray Sauma, support Bureau of Public Health, Blila Bulis Raigal, Marekal Rakal, Tatakal Orior, Lomer Gara Ay, Selwase, Ngaria Osaba Akla, Ngaria Osaba Akal, Sabi Amalngu, Sel om ngara al sila dalong okal nga ngay kay gitil lula raba makita lo marura al sel. Akmal swakal elak mo malukot ko ramarigel. Ambassador Aaron Wright kati kalangartiang, but I extend my gratitude for his sharing of personal stories that shed light on the courage required to speak openly about such sensitive issues. Mlaswa ka lamang kuklot ka karakngala ka. Tiri kal tamakamili marome. Nakalsatan malkoiling maltigarong ko rada makamal adaman mo kital deswil girela tamak. Mangmal mam kitarong ko sa longot ado ulwaisay. Marangal ka ngal sila gidial talang Auckland hindi ka daw wise. Mangogiw ti ay gidal dum kami maasang artyang. Bol sabi edal normal al daw eyes. It's okay. Misel om ko bakal mo raigel el basyol kami ang ngaringi raal sila tolong lalaigel al dabe era kami emo rior ruli bol sabi edal low eyes bol sa edal share stories arigid edo siga ang yeso mausab akla. So by doing so, by speaking about such sensitive issues, we foster an atmosphere of trust, dismantling victim blaming and allowing us to confront abusive practices embedded in our culture. I'd like to express heartfelt appreciation to the NFPA Director Iri Kato and his entire team for their generous support, both in organizing this event and providing critical resources. Their commitment is instrumental in advancing our collective efforts against gender-based violence and family violence. And we look forward to a continued and fruitful partnership, particularly in addressing the training needs of our service providers. Reflecting on the Director Madraisa's mention of the past decade since the passing and implementation of the FPA, I'm reminded of the collective efforts and struggles to bring about this significant breakthrough. Personally, it brings back memories of the challenges we faced, underscoring the importance of FPA in driving progress against domestic violence in Palau. Diwaigel lulukoy Director Ayori Kato, no violence in Palau. Kiredal mo ngul metigingedal wasay no violence in Palau. Mo kiredal tiyakat accept ang idil violence. Zero victims sa lang tiyaka violence. In acknowledging the dedication of those working daily to support victims and address perpetrators, you have to recognize the emotional toll borne by our service providers. These frontliners, this collective effort requires both punishment and rehabilitation for perpetrators, and I commend everyone involved. So LLCs, the policy level work to ensure procedural alignment and prevent victims from falling through the cracks is commendable. Segitil MOU that you will all receive a copy of. The amended MOU is a milestone, and I eagerly anticipate its signing. However, these past 10 years have shown us that while FPA is a crucial response mechanism, it is not a prevention approach. As we contemplate potential legislative reforms, we critically analyze the no-drop policy, the efficacy of police discretion, and the need for recognizing psychological abuse or coercive control. However, we must tread carefully as any changes to this cornerstone legislation demand thorough legal analysis. Tirakal po se kung ay sila siya kami dum ko ngati ang irmas. Kami wagiriwal almot makaro ko takay nga sew marata si i-report ang mergid. Sel lang ngaringiya. Aur da alak lang ra alsela da dalang okle engi le member ra taraigal al adal ngani member ra mai barelang adala ri sela belaw adala ipang sayne el sibilo ay sila mi mungkol ra bulis malubam kol ra Michelle lol ngi tangsew leng selom subel lul sa dania senet justice rudip ar bulis ako talas tolo ay sertir tabay mora family member tamara si liri re EOI sa tamara sister tira wasay abi ika ilbadak aka talmala mangul mar ospital seguida de sang gira del kidal adrablo amo mimokal lo ay se osigang se seguida dum tel gotal meeting obang kamiu ar maasal dalala belaw boda da ka roel sa edel masaba akra dalang ok lamar ngaligit matirkal sa almerdil ma amaasama ar magikaril ngal. So as we kumsula leng seldoreng sering say dia anda cakal kolle gel chip ngira manyor nge adala biik akokmal kolor ngeng adiakal lamay letrigek mal ka adring esarma you know ay gagita dorengas that's why the report of marbulis leng o inke buy gerang yaur o inke dal acting director elanga buy gerang yaur mundiri kal si kalau ay sering ile tirge mo kaw adan mo ra al kabli lamang so ngari ay git ile bi ko sige dati kaw adan ro ko yang ngani club lilet mang aldong malgiri adan mo kay ngese ro ko lolong sir take the report. So as we contemplate potential legislative reforms, we must analyze our sige the no drop policy. The complexity of gender-based violence extend beyond legislation. Cultures of secrecy, issues of trust, may get challenges related to our cultural ties. May silgulo ko ni ngariam asang, kirikan mo ram asang ra next week, tiamal ngaraleng, kirikan mo mo'y tratal telal, may maldart. Ya justice rudim selgi moray rabalu al masaudar tiang engo ay so direk mal beto kamera matala court mosiga o sa akal ang ulo mo ang ngariam asanga mangirin maamoy tawdo mamlak mo rabi ilwa say sik mal girikan mo ning mal maliw drawlo kung girikan mo moy tratal telal may maldarta mangkalbi ila tigelo dik mong mangarang albolong at udala sinti ka kamama direk mal dia ka dia kal sabam di sa amas ka ay maldart mongwa ay maldart talmelong sang kalbi ila redil iyo sitya ko di ay maldart ya tamaral al sansang tirgala odam tirgan dia kalau dik mutyak man maliw drawlo makakira kal mo itatal tel may maldart ka dapat tel ay maldart talmay ay gagid ay gel mo sub irtel tingeda syukang rigid menggiradal mo way sen lungu at mo kawalti kare mo matngay gel guk roll sergid mengkuk sa emadi ay maldart tim ay maldart okay, so segida gel cultural ties that must be addressed sel the deal with tegidal situation at family violence. Additionally, engiradal confronta impactra ay gagidale toxic masculinity. Tegid sel ko tokoro omlimro. Nga kamla ngara outreach lo ngila justice rudim sel tabo example ak mga do ay gel story ni. So selo sa dra omlimro. Kangarabar. Kamera laudan, semali, mga ador ko mal diu ngilaro koy. Bako mal mal ka manglar dar tirkel dakal mali marom ngara. Appising SLC. Okore mangmalungi latoy kadirek kalmara lang alakal ra tirkal sa limal mulungot adu ortir ko amkas masum ra parking lat te ka mo karartir te ka mo ngala dartir kadi ma soy para al sala apply ngarge kalik ram dir ka amru la kalik tiang ko lam mo tiang magayal da ngum sel blatong ngulos sa bagi ay gagid ya gel do mes menggira dal mo kay ngasew yang maarinya klauda lak lamkamla milimarome ngarabarek maldim la ka problem rakam la wila rom laudan se emloy golo ventri to kola de malmei el murabla na masanu el al maul se baka balatong yang maangarinya aklauda lak matiamal maringal tokol do sa dargi hindi ngariya economic stress mal maringal dalang okra elang tial tokora climate change mandira kalmal el mosquito stress Rada lomala makasaya magi tergidal tigal sa edal el nga emulsion sa ling lamo o makasaya aledal dolabel ng long magit. Matukura substance abuse tiyamal multifaceted wicked problem. Di mo to strengthen na understanding ergi di akmla mga director share segi din ginalmutan mo rin tara survey. We talked about the study from 2013, 2014, 1 out of 4 women ginalmutan mo rin tara survey. Matamong tingin mo luwasay mla mo ang rangan number ergi. Legal daral those only capture a fraction of these cases. Give more comprehensive data, the prevention activities, and enhance our response services. Makmal marang asulim no sube iul mer el ang kaswes in order to be able to provide the resources we need, ma help in girel nga niya survey madamom dinget mula sing malwang ranga tial el problem el albangaringi. Looking ahead, yung malsakalo ay say nga plans for a permanent shelter for victims with support the promise ng government of India is in progress. Sa lang kagi dali Red Cross am law ay sa single incident program nga katira kam lamo 3 times el collective tamral mere dalo lol nga sew please abangusel number ngi malsu mga nga aldabe ra kami los pe ang sebol si Ilwara Michelle. Dirikal nga niya program ra director share madray saul logi utegi the referral pathway dirikal will provide a temporary shelter. So the shelter that we're hoping to have come by end of next year hopefully tegi funded by government of India will provide not only victims of gender-based violence but also extend assistance and more human trafficking victims victims of other crimes. Commitment to achieve our SDGs, especially Goal 5, respond to violence against women and girls. Our boys. Today's dialogue reinforces our dedication to creating a safer, more just society for all. Manbrenga sulil ner elang lo oti segi di elngia arungo mabrungule dalwase bolse be ela bela mo o ngil belul selba aklar adangi el diaga violence alsil. Thank you. Together we will continue taking the journey for a future free from gender-based violence, from family violence. Mukhamaral masarela alsil for coming.
So la Vice President Regel mil closing remarks serni maralungi la teme de kadamaral 5 minutes till 12 p.m. Lingak about the closer meeting ergid makmal di swakal ngutel te alemre nga suler bekal adal no sab milmer el altu taw bagel tilung ngaringi almo tel last meeting era next week Tuesday ra Malaysia magidira kal mo send the invitation e malolingit tabol sab ami wal May segidi ako mo ra national forum ergid di mo gid el other bela wal masada gid el solutions e mo sab edal present el mora all bill. Tirakal Malmer nga sulir other UNFPA for their support. Thank you UNFPA for your support of the refreshments and the equipment and your technical expertise. Tirakal mal masawlam asal bilung floor leader at tial basyo. Maralungi lab CL maasma bolsel boda marega mornyang lungu mora era bora lunch bols edal nga group photo lobang igal mal klabo el CL amayo. Tamaral Masawla Rogul panelists for your time. Mal Masawla nurse ra hospital mar bek Rogul maas mar ruba karegal balu mar magakarel ad. Thank you very much. So mal Masawla pastor ngirablos el mlosabel el mecho energy de mo meskida agora scripture reading mo sabel close ra meeting gi de lobang lungu bless akale dak malolingit ma we were saying Governor Paloy the joiner trigal gida ma aspilum ma first lady ma olbil bera madal marbekal adal bera bagartire the nguwak group picture edward mo basel drone ringi ngul aklel alsils komal masulang albekla ad
ang malungil el belmer gami rogui. Timereng asulela Dios rate al el mosbegel me belulu ra madamiu. Akti ulungito lase me wera gululu ek iwi a tarabadas. Male koradi wera bok iwi edik tunga sesel tokol girek. Ngaga pastor Yagobra ngira blos rangrar dra ngalegela blos mablorang. Ngaga mletel belaura pa ma 4 years ago. Ya seral gol ngaga lwase memo lulu ra waiga gidel occasion. Ya gumagal el maralme ngaga ngarangaram lungui. Umagal el maralme gor omdas ra uduswegel wase ngarak mo kmungul girela awaiga gidel issue gida face ra alsela community. Maram rigel mlaringa te illegal mo involved by gel dulu asing drug and alcohol abuse program. Mlaringa baby ra other bela black umstri ra counseling. Rigel program tira require el giril malay serbol merega recommend el mora chat lo ase morset program lo asem issue ra certificate lo asem mlapa meet the requirements. Mingitarung akto ko se orang se mingitarung le ngaringi triel kapal black helper ti. Some of the questions that you ask them while the program ag-eskara husband a question, he would give you an answer, and then next omit in her presence the same question that you asked about a week ago. Mo mengel lo sia husband ng miloyak lamrang malubeng mulak. A lot of times kada matigringil mula say dial marang. Maktangok le maloreng se mom dengek mula se yaklol isura al sela family stem from the fact lo se ada dia Dios raklangarengi. So speaking coming from the church o mesringil ngar segid el angle e o mesringil mula se al sugum dia raklangar a Dios ada dia bolong marang dia Dios raklangarengi e segid el familia warama. Vice President long do emble mo abebil toy a reminder nga sel ngara Ephesians chapter 5 verse 18 enduli tigidel toy. And do not get drunk with wine, which leads to reckless living, but be filled by the Spirit, speaking to one another in psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs, singing and making music with your heart to the Lord, giving thanks always for everything to God the Father in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, submitting to one another in the fear of Christ. Akmongoy wurtiang ale ulak tula tokok mula se ngulmo ulel problem ra alsela familia sugum mandiak a Dios raklangar adel ngar alsel segid family en mora adi ngara adam el mora adil el mora rangala ya family telmal maknatiang emal en goret sak mula sel sugum tangarnya rangatiang ngara gelesia ya gumrang la siar pastora bla malasmel help ay gagidel family a lot of times it was short mang mal fall el mergid el family mula sel suguma ada angara gagidel issue tiswal mut el umuyo gagidel base smodia terlibe lom sodel en dene kademo mululu le osengel ngatiang akmula se agristusa ngeya biblia akmula se yesusa hedra abadi a church abadi ra angalhet my iglesia a personified el female agristus ahead mangarsel Ephesians 5:22 as wives submit to your husband as to the Lord, because the husband is the head of the wife as Christ is the head of the church. He is the savior of the body. Now, as the church submits to Christ, so also wives are to submit to their husbands in everything. Tiada kaldu lo asem rula kalegeling lamot teme kalumur ngam kamal meo nesakal megal delang lamom kalgolt kamral maknit long bial. Dia kalse. Aradila ma mesiora bil loba rengalol tubok lengo mesiungel mora Dios. Masala obel tigrengal mora abil el redil lengo mesiungel el mora Dios. Diakal dulu asay submit nga kamo betigaru gorgaw. Alsum diakal betigaru banag diak submit le gorgaw. No, it's not diakal predicator say. A husband agirel betigaru rabil no matter what. Mardila girel submit al mora husband no matter what. Husband, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. Asaala girel betiga rungur rabil, el diwaya Christus mlo betiga rungur iglesia, meng iliti ayang emlera belulad el muatlet telelaad, emlo madra garusel mom also bel iglesia. Ma Adam angaradru ulel a Christus el ngar alsela family el ngia diagdil identify a problem elong olebata. Identify a problem e sige a solution e sige di problem e help el fixing. Como subes en dimlak min el mel me mga adu ul waisay di gang amral issue di adil gida ngarbela face mrigel magda direk el face ak ngarbe ngaram mrigel ngaregel time el bok pok translator al sela gortrum malubak da ngara video translate el mora adal ngara al sela gortrum hearing ya gaida issue le face ar ngalge del ngal gorbelaw el ngaram mrigel qado lulu rubagal Dios sa gimral merenga sule merel al sils kamral mesaul ra way gagi del meeting way gagi del conference el rule mam el mo aware el mula se rubaga belul ada dia lorail el mongil abi bilak mula say for as long as the earth remains and di bloel ngarnya early rain ma a later rain di bloel ngarnya kal gold makleal di ngos siul tigingé merubaga akmur mamla se abdul ada amrail el momaknit makmarenga sule marawai gagi del conference rubagal mga dadu e o maklat terakamam our parents el momadengek mula se ngara giram el mrul el ngara alsela society el gama makkeringi magulungit temrenga sulem ragel effort tirgang edam el mrul awai gagi denga kamal melulu el giram ar other belau especially togubets ardil el ngara gal families ramam lendia adil el personal issue ay nga dire el ngar alsela family et pob del mer alsela community ramam makmululu el gira meru bagal kula sebol sebem el ngosugmam especially del mam maru udmam marbe bir ramam el mosbir edam el mo o alao darandi sel klunyo le latigingem el tira madangali el ngara edal luk e dire el gulingit bol sebir el mo bal gaisar andir maul de suir edam lo lingitang eso mal sugum to soy sebral se lawai gaigi de luldigil malu bandring e bol subire edam el manga do ra right talat bol subire ang maya a correct information bol subire el matig sel ngiang eso tira giri los pering al sugum agi mrur malu bagi melang mes malu bagi el muk agi melamol mel bli lawai gaigi de lo alak el ngiang ara araro el mergamam makmal merenga sule me malol ngitak lang tangat el morti rubaga ko do si belau o dar sa gel family tira going through ay del issue e malol ngito la sa edal tigingem pol somehow some way ra someday e pol sabel edam el rich el mora ay del family ngam lulu el gire gel programs el available el mortir material ngara gal programs pol sabire rubak el mral mongil lomes el orengs el lo rit el olil tatmula sei magarang alol ngaseu el mora ay del family kamral masauli rubak arogul toy yak merenga sulem emo osmeritial el conference endik merenga sulem el girela gel sesel galem lot mok el mo bolongang arogul ade bol sibir adam ng mayak lisiir e gaw bol modang sang klem el ngar alsel kamal masaul ak merenga sulem tial basyo marogul ad el ngar alsel e gaw modang al trik motorwatang ay gay de rubaga bol nglungu am elont mam el ngar klem amen.
Igor mo betok. Pinakalma.
Oy, vai ser.
Okay, so our special lunch is at the corner in the